It had been 3 years since he had come here. Now he was on the battlefield. Thunder was rumbling everywhere and people were shouting, and a man in red armor was in front of him. A young man with dark hair, wearing a dark cloak, raised his hand and caused the dance of the gates of heaven to dance. Dozens of Kaguras. Empire, year 430, early May. The guy looked at his first battlefield and clenched his fist. Someone approached and asked General Kuro if he was alright. It was Mino, a bull beastman of enormous size. The guy, smiling, trembled and said with a smirk that he thought he was about to shit his pants. Smirking, Mino said he was surprised that General Kuro joined the army like that because his father told him that the sons of aristocrats attend military school. Of course, it's not for him to say this, but wouldn't it be better for them to retreat now? They wouldn't gain anything from it. Smiling, the boy said that he was sure he would have lost more if he ran away. He thinks he would gain more by fighting. And how can he run away leaving his guys behind? Supporting the damned won't do him any good. That's what Mino thought and even said, but Kuro replied that it's not about supporting them. The cursed list consists of elves, dwarves, beastmen, and other races. Being cursed in this world is very humiliating. They are often discriminated against. Mino looked ahead and said that he understood where the general was coming from. But would the hastily made structure be able to stop their forces? At the same time, people of completely different races were reinforcing the structure on the field. Kuro looked at Mino and then at the creatures, or as they are commonly called here, the damned, who were building the barricade. Mino asked if it would be better to use guerrilla warfare against them. Kuro then said that he would like to reduce the number of opponents, but in that case the whole plan would go to waste. The kingdom of St. Algoit belonged to the Keef Empire, which is now at war. The hottest battle is taking place in Emperor Noji's territory. Why would they deliberately attack the territory of Marka, which is not their way at all? Besides, they chose to go through the forest. Kuro didn't know much, but he knew that they needed to prepare well since they had 10,000 soldiers and Kuro himself only had 1,000. It would have been great if reinforcements had arrived in time to help, but Kuro requested reinforcements 2 days ago, and his commander, the Lord, the Marquess of Araxes, and the other allies don't even give a sign. The boy looked towards Leo and asked about how she was doing over there. Leo, who was now sharpening his knife, said there was no problem, and seeing his attitude, Mino became furious. But Kuro stopped him and said it was fine. He won't do that as long as Leo follows orders. The guy then gave Leo a horrified look, and Leo, turning slightly pale, said he realized he'd had enough. He would try to live up to expectations. Nodding, the Night Prince put his hand on the warrior's shoulder and said that he was counting on him. The guy then looked at Mino and asked him if he had said something to Leo, to which the guy shook his head and said he hadn't done anything like that. The one who scared him was Kuro himself. The surprised guy looked questioningly at his subordinate, and the latter explained that the general had very cold eyes. Thinking about it, Kuro said that a leader shouldn't show his emotions widely. Those who became commanders a few days ago often say that. Smirking, Kuro said that Mino had just become an assistant commander, didn't he? Smiling, Mino said that even if his title changed, he would always keep an eye on Kuro-san. Chuckling, Kuro said that was rude. Well, some might say that being a commander is like being an aristocrat. But he almost dropped out of military school when it was just a little while before graduation. Plus, he has to repay the parents who raised him. That's why he couldn't die here. Looking over the fence, the guy said he would stop them no matter what. The guy asked the lizard if he was in good shape, to which the guy looked at the guy and got teary-eyed. Seeing this, the guy thought to himself that it looks like this guy is hungry. The lizard turned around and said that there were enemies ahead. Seeing their numbers, they must be scouts. At the same time, Mino looked at the general and he said that he didn't want the scouts to give anything to headquarters, so they should deal with them. The boy stepped forward and wanted to call his name, but when he felt his own trembling, he gritted his teeth and calmed down. He had not come this far to shiver. Afterward, he called out loudly that his name was Kuro. He is Kurold, Kuroford, the Baron's first son. He demanded names from the knights who attacked him. For him to fight a knight without a name was a disgrace. Raising his sword, the lad demanded a one-on-one fight. Battle. The soldiers looked at each other, and one of them, snatching up his sword, called out his name and said he accepted the challenge. His name was Ackles. Just as the soldier galloped a few meters, something pierced his throat and he fell to the ground. Seeing this, the other soldiers shouted that he was a coward. He challenged him to a duel and used a trap. Kuro, not the least bit worried, shouted that it was time. Earthen spikes came out of the ground and pierced both the horses and the soldiers. Seeing this, Kuro sighed and said it worked. They died almost instantly. Turning his head, the guy told Shiro and Quaro that they did a good job. Shiro, the white wolf beastman, said cheerfully that they did well, and Kajiro, smiling, supported his friend. Seeing them wagging their tails, the boy thought they looked more like dogs than wolves. Smiling, Kuro said that thanks to them he was now a target, so he would continue to count on them. The ones back in the bushes cheerfully said they would do what they could. When the guy returned, Mino, smirking, said he even believed the general wanted to fight one-on-one. To which he, smirking, asked if he really looked like a dumbass. Mino said that they probably thought the general was a proud aristocrat. To which he smirked and said that if pride would lead to victory, he would want a lot of pride. Mino then asked what they were going to do with the corpses. Kuro then said that he would want to scare the enemy, so there was no need to remove the corpses. If they think there are corpses scattered everywhere, Kuro will be able to control their movements. But will everything go right? Hearing the question from Mino, the guy said that they are checking it right now. Someone called out for the general, and he went over. In front of him stood a middle-aged man with blonde hair and a huge army, and he was sullen and angry. Mino, who knew him, said that the matter was nothing because this man was Ignis. When Kuro looked at him with a question, a surprised Mino asked that had he, being in Kuro's army, not heard of him. General Ignis Formalhaut. He is a god of war who is a divine sword mage. He single-handedly destroyed the former squad of Mino himself. The guy smirked and said his name means something, right? Not only does he have a formidable name, but if you attack him, you'll definitely die. Mino asked the guy what they were going to do, and the guy swallowed and said that of course he realizes he's a formidable person. But Kuro can't just give up now. They're definitely not going to back down. The battle began, and the opponents rushed to their barricades. From behind the barricade, the dwarf controlled the archers, who shot as hard as they could. Due to the fact that the archers were elves, the arrows were shooting fast and the arrows flew without stopping. The warriors of the damned also deployed on the field. The lizard chopped without sparing anyone, while his highness and the tiger, covering each other, destroyed the enemies by the dozens. The opposing general ordered the army to destroy the fence and capture them, but there was a meat grinder ahead, and from behind someone grabbed those approaching the bushes and destroyed them. The unknown threat made the soldiers panic and shouted at each other to stop, but it was too late. The soldiers rushed forward, to where there was war, where there was death, and where there were the damned. Kuro, seeing that things were working out in his favor now, smiled. The plan was moving forward, so at this rate they would win. But then suddenly Ignis began to chant a spell. O Lord of Destruction, crush everything and everyone in your path, a powerful technique of the gods, flame. A huge fireball formed above the general's head, and the soldiers flinched and looked in its direction. The general firmly told everyone to calm down, for they had nothing to fear. They are suppressing the enemy with their overwhelming strength. Therefore, they must break through. And there it was, morale was up again, and it was not in Kuro's favor. Kuro said that apparently it wouldn't be that easy. With each passing second, the enemy soldiers advanced, and now the first one behind the barricade had fallen from the enemy's spears. And yet it was not enough. But they were holding well, but the battle had dragged on too long. If the standoff continued, even a little longer, Kuro knew they would be at a significant disadvantage in strength. The battle behind the barricade was in full swing. The beastmen were raging, destroying everyone, but the soldiers were eager to lose as well. Kuro's strong fighters were attacked several times, and so he Lizard was beaten, and one part of the barricade broke through following him. As soon as the barricade was broken, the enemy soldiers sprinted towards Kuro's army. Mino immediately rushed forward, and Kuro ordered them to close the gap in the defense. Meanwhile, Mino chopped the soldiers to pieces with his axe, but it wasn't enough. Gritting his teeth, Kuro realized the danger of the whole situation, and then suddenly someone groaned. Turning around, he saw the soldier killing his subordinate, and realized that things were bad. A second later, Kuro turns around and the soldier rushes towards him. After another second, Kuro reaches out for his sword in panic, and the soldier swings his sword. The speed wasn't enough and the soldier slashes Kuro in the eye. There was no pain from the shock for about 5 seconds, and Kuro just stared dumbly at the ground, which turned into the sky. And as he fell, the pain came over him. Feeling the hellish pain, Kuro could barely hold on to the threads of consciousness and could barely stand up. But the soldier, seeing that the enemy was not dead, rushed back to him with a vertical sweep. Feeling tired, the guy remembered magic and used Jinsu Kagura's spell. A dark sphere appeared in his hand and flew towards the soldier's head. As everything went dark and he didn't realize what it was, he panicked. Kuro squeezed his hand using space control, a forced movement. The dark sphere disappeared. The soldier's head disappeared and blood rushed from his neck. Breathing heavily, Kuro stood up and saw a pillar of flame. The pillar of flame was noticed not only by him, but also by the enemy general. The plan was simple. Before the battle began, Kuro picked up a special unit with a special mission. 700 soldiers of the army would be here on the front line and would withdraw the enemy army and hold it. And the remaining 300, a special elven squad, should suddenly attack the enemy base while their defenses are weak. The guy looked at the two commanders and said he would leave it to them. They nodded. Ignis immediately realized that it was their base, from which the second pillar of flame had already risen attacked. With the general distracted, Kuro realized that now was the time, and used Gensu Kaguru and sent a ball towards Ignis. The latter, of course, noticed it thanks to his excellent reflexes. He immediately used the spell, chanting that the Lord of Destruction would reflect everything in its path. The powerful technique of the gods, the sacred blade, was used and Ignis slashed through the dark ball. But he thought he cut through it, but the sword went through without affecting the ball of darkness in any way. Kuro immediately used space control, and when the orb was in place, added a force shift. Surprisingly, Ignis was able to dodge the ball at the last moment, and it grazed his shoulder. The arm fell off, but the general himself was unhurt. Kuro was stunned by this outcome, but Ignis gritted his teeth and looked back at the pillar of fire. Kuro flinched and felt real fear, because the blonde-haired man was looking at him with real fury. Quickly rising, the boy began to retreat, and Ignis said that the enemy had not burned him to the ground, but had only taken his arm away. He could still fight. Well, Kuro expected something like that and yelled for the ambush to work. The wolves came out of hiding and pounced on the enemy soldiers. The soldiers panicked again and the wolves slew them in no time. Kuro, smirking, asked if they expected the enemy to hide nearby. Ignis, feeling furious, still held back and shouted that they were retreating. It was necessary to protect His Highness. As soon as Ignis said that, the damned breathed a sigh of relief, saying that the plan had succeeded and they had somehow managed to force their opponents to retreat. It was the first battle, but the losses were so many that they couldn't be counted. It was getting late and Kuro was sitting with an eye patch. Mino approached him and asked if he was okay, to which he smiled and said that other than not being able to see out of his right eye, he was fine. Nino then reported that their losses were too great and that the wounded could not be counted. Well, this is war. Deaths can't be avoided, but if only Kuro had a chance to do better. If only they could build the Pillar of Fire faster. Just then, Mino reported that the task force had returned. Kuro, walking towards them, was surprised. The elves were walking with difficulty. Some were supporting someone because of wounds, and some were not walking at all. The wounds were of varying degrees, from cuts to loss of limbs. Leading the way was a dark elf woman with gray hair. With difficulty, she bowed to the guy and asked him to accept her deepest apologies. The guy looked at her and she informed him that her name was Layla. When the Special Forces commander died, she took his place as second in command. Their losses totaled 253. The enemy onslaught was too great. On top of that, the time allotted to them according to the plan had long passed. Raising her head, the girl asked with an indifferent look to accept her deepest apologies. Kuro shuddered, for the losses were enormous. Less than 50 out of 300 had returned. He realized that he was actually sending them to commit suicide. But Kuro thought he realized how things would turn out. Pressing his lips together, the boy told her to continue with her report. In the other world, he also had thoughts of waging wars with other countries. It had been 3 years since he entered this world. He didn't have any opportunities, only the knowledge he had gotten in school. He didn't understand why he was here, but he didn't know how to go back either. The girl stated that she hoped the war was over and wanted to take care of household chores. Reinforcements arrived the next day and first they dressed the wounded and set up camp here. Some said they were saved, and some denied it, saying it was too early to tell. Kuro smiled and said that everything would be fine because she was there. The girl finally smiled and asked Chrono how he was and how much time had passed. The guy smiled and said about a month. Isn't that right, Tilia? When Mino heard that name, he said he was mistaken, or had he heard that name somewhere. Kuro then explained that she was the 5th daughter of Emperor Lamar. Mino looked at the girl in surprise and said that, I mean she is a princess. The shocked bull immediately knelt down, saying in a trembling voice that he deeply apologized for not recognizing Her Majesty right away. And when he saw how the general was acting, he said that if he acted like that, everyone's heads would fly off their shoulders, sighing. Tilia told the Minotaur to calm down. Kuro smiled and said that he and Tilia were classmates when they were at the military academy, so it was fine. Tilia folded her arms across her chest and looked at the guy and asked him to tell her more about the situation. Smiling, the guy said he didn't even know where to start, but he soon told me everything. The princess looked at the guy in surprise. After all, he had defeated Fomalgaut General Igni. The boy said that he didn't think he had defeated them cleanly, rather he had just forced them to retreat. The girl, smiling proudly, said that, as expected of the person she was counting on, she knew that if it was Chrono, it was bound to work somehow. The guy was grateful, of course, but even so, even though the plan had succeeded, his troops had been almost completely wiped out and the damage the special elven unit had taken was simply colossal. He simply couldn't accept her compliment. The guy's sad look made Tilia walk up to him and, lifting his chin, look him in the eyes. The girl looked into his eye and cast a spell. Almighty God, commanding pure and light order, divine technique, healing. The light illuminated the guy, and he felt the nagging pain in his eye gradually begin to pass. The girl, moving away from the guy, asked how he was feeling, and Kuro, taking off the bandage, touched the eye where the scar was, and said that it wasn't much better, he couldn't see anything anyway. The girl sadly said that with her healing power, it would be hard to get more results. Then the guy smiled and said that at least the pain had subsided, so he was grateful, smirking. Tilia said that the battle wound gave him honor. She's sure there's a cool heroic one-on-one fight waiting for him in the future. The girl noticed Kuro and Mino's dim gazes and said well, or not. Kuro then asked if that general was really such an incredible person. Then the girl shouted that of course he was. His divine technique is stronger than all the techniques of the major gods who command fire, water, earth, wind, light and darkness. He borrows his power from the god of war who commands scarlet red destruction, the best in attack power. Clenching her fist and snapping it, Tilia said that she couldn't even imagine the suffering he caused to the Empire. Mino gently informed the general that it was a normal reaction, and the guy, feeling awkward, said that well, he didn't know that. The girl waved her hand and asked them about the situation, to which Kuro hesitated and said that General Ignis mentioned His Highness, so that means the prince is also here and leading the battle. Even though the issue of the succession to the throne had already been settled, it was normal that there were people who were unhappy about it. And to shut them up, he's trying to prove himself through achievements, such as defeating a neighboring state. But that will happen if they win. Kuro reports that they just lost a battle without an advantage, so they might not be coming anytime soon. Their forces to protect the prince had definitely weakened, and Kuro could only hope that his own subordinates would slow him down. Placing one hand at his side, the girl told the boy that he was getting his hopes up too high. But he's still pretty smart, isn't he? Kuro, looking at her, asked if the princess was mocking him, to which the girl replied that she was complimenting him. Completely unaware of General Ignis, he was able to clearly assess the situation and take the necessary action. Awkwardly scratching the back of his head, the guy said that, well, in his opinion, it was normal. Smiling, the girl said that if it seemed normal to him, that in itself meant it wasn't normal. Just then the soldier interrupted her, telling her that her tent was ready. The girl informed him that he was currently working in Herschel, and apparently he would have to stay a bit longer. That was why the princess had arrived first. Smiling, the guy said that was her way of trying to ask him for reinforcements. Well, maybe then she would give Duke Eric a few words on his behalf. The girl nodded, saying why not. And after that, the girl, having been to the camp, said that she really couldn't imagine a man who could, setting aside principles, come to the rescue and be a tough guy. Smiling, Kuro thanked her for getting up to speed quickly. The girl said that, well, after all, he just wants his friends around. Well, that's not a bad quality. So, a week later, in the castle town of Herschel, in one of the corridors of the manor, Kuro and Mino were standing next to a door. Smiling, the guy told Mino that he looked chipper today, to which the guy smiled and said that no matter what, he didn't want to make a big fuss or he'd get fired. Kuro opened the door and said it was fine, just let them just make it nice and quick. When they entered the room, there was a stifling silence. Everyone was looking at him with frowning faces, and the guy certainly understood that. Soon he approached Leo and told him they were here to see him and asked how he was feeling. The disgruntled lion said that nothing had changed. Of course he's sorry, but apparently he won't be able to fight for a long time yet. Leo said that it was a big surprise to everyone how he had proved himself. Being able to determine one's limits is one of the most important qualities of a good warrior. Clutching the sheet, Leo apologized for Kuro, Sama's right eye, and said that he would show that he was capable of protecting it. The boy smiled and thought it wasn't his fault at all. The guy nodded and said he was counting on him, to which the guy nodded back. Kuro wondered if he should decline her invitation. Every time he comes over, she just looks away. Nino said she's just bad at socializing. Or rather, she just doesn't know how to socialize with people. He probably shouldn't tell the general this, but a lot of people got hurt because of officers and aristocrats. The guy sighed and Mino continued, saying that for that reason, even if the general acts like a good person, people will think he's just pretending and continue to reject him. There would be no trust in him. Guy asked if that was really about Mino himself, to which Mino replied that he understood that Chrono-sama was a good person, but the others would be afraid of him. The guy asked with a serious look if he could have any effect on that, to which Mino said he didn't think so. Even if he could, Mino himself doesn't want the general to suffer. Smirking, the guy said he was too kind, to which the Minotaur said he wasn't so kind. While they were walking alone, a little girl stopped him and asked if he needed flowers. The boy smiled and asked the girl how much they cost, thinking that even a small child had to work. The girl cheerfully said it was 1 copper coin. Then the guy said he didn't seem to have any copper coins, at which point the girl became sad. But the guy handed her a bronze coin and said she didn't need change. The overjoyed girl asked if he was sure and then thanked him. Looking at the girl, Mino skeptically told the general that even if he could be kind, there should be limits. Smirking, the guy said that was fine. He didn't want to go empty-handed. The hospital didn't have enough room for all the injured, so they decided to house the rest at the hotel. Right now, Mino-san was waiting in the restaurant on the first floor. As he approached Layla's room, the guy wondered what he should say to her. He was still nervous talking to her. Once the battle was over, they waited for the individual units to return. Only if everything went well. Only if the pillar of fire would rise faster. Or maybe the elves just got scared and scattered. These were the thoughts that came to his mind at that moment. But Layla came and was able to accomplish the mission even after the death of the squad leader. However, it took a lot of effort. Therefore, as a general, he must take full responsibility. Chrono could no longer see her smile and it was frustrating. Now he wondered how she felt about his visits. The boy knocked and told Layla he would come in and immediately froze when he entered. The girl was sitting unclothed in a prayerful pose and washing her face. The guy apologized in a panic and said he didn't want to peek, to which the girl indifferently asked him to close the door. The guy, shuddering, immediately did so and turned toward the door. He felt disgusted. Why was he standing here instead of waiting outside the door? The fact that he saw her naked body was a mere coincidence, but the fact that he didn't go out and wait for her to get ready was unforgivable. The girl let him know she was done, and the guy turned and wanted to bow. But Layla beat him to it, bowing and saying she was sorry. The guy was shocked and the girl closed her eyes and apologized for him seeing her ugly body. The guy started to deny in panic, saying she had a beautiful body. Besides, he should apologize. But the girl said that couldn't be true. Smiling, the guy said that. But it is true and he thinks she is very beautiful. Layla looked at his face, and then the guy held out flowers to her and said that he brought flowers for her to get better faster. The girl thanked him and even smiled slightly. Suddenly making up her mind, she asked the guy why he was so nice to her even though she was a half-elf. The guy asked her in surprise that she was really a half-elf, to which she asked that he didn't know it that way. The guy shook his head and said he had no idea. Half-elves are those who are born from a human and an elf. Now that he thought about it, her ears are a little smaller than other elves. The girl with an expressionless face said that was understandable, and then Chrono, smiling, said that she thought Layla was a brave girl. The girl froze, and then, trembling, asked what that was, even though she was half-elf. Then Chrono said that even if she is a half-elf, his opinion of her won't change one bit. Although he can't be proud of himself, he is proud to have a brave subordinate like Layla. His words made the girl blush and tears came to her eyes. Seeing this, the guy panicked, and then the girl, rubbing her eyes with her hands, said that everything was not as it seemed. She apologized, and seeing that she was trembling, Chrono said that then he would come back later. As he left, he cast one last glance at the crying girl. The guy remembered those words of hers more than once on his way home. Placing his plate on the table, he was told that he looked so gloomy since he came back. Looking up, Chrono saw Sheila. The girl was embarrassed, saying that she told them not to call her by her name but to call her Madam. The guy apologized to Madam, and she asked about what was wrong with Layla. The guy looked away and remembered that awkward moment and thought he couldn't say he saw her naked and crying. In the end, he said that nothing much had happened. He then asked how business was going, to which the girl looked around her hotel and said it was as he saw it. The business was going well as long as her husband was alive. But after a few years, because of taxes, she no longer understands what she is working for, and because of that the business is at a loss. What is this Marquis Aresex thinking? The girl then asked about what happened to the kingdom of Sint Algo. Raising his head, Chrono said that he didn't have exact information, but he thought that the chances of fighting them again were slim. Then Mino, smiling, said that the general, that is Chrono, was the one who drove them away instead of Marquis Rekex. The girl looked at the boy in surprise and he smiled proudly. Mino also said that their general Chrono was the one who chased away the kingdom of Sint Algo. The girl said in surprise that this little boy was able to do that. It seemed she shouldn't judge others by their appearance. And besides, if you looked closely, he had a rather handsome face. Sheila walked over to him, and he saw right in front of him these magnificent mounds of rather exposed surfaces. He looked a little embarrassed, and then the doorbell rang and an old man came in. The old man apologized for distracting General Chrono and identified himself as Cider Window. He added that he was Lady Tilia's subordinate. Lady Tilia was looking for him and had instructed him to find Chrono. The lad, after saying goodbye, said well, he would come as soon as he could, and then left. The old man informed him that Lady Tilia was waiting for him in the study of the Marquis mansion. When he entered, he found her in an armchair with a displeased face. The girl informed him that he was late and it was difficult for her to wait for someone for a long time. To which the guy smiled and said that he got here as fast as he could and then asked about what happened. The girl said that she wanted him to know why she was now in Marquis Rex's office. Hearing this, the lad sensed that nothing good was going to happen here and turned around. Of course, he wasn't allowed to get away with that, and the pen drilled a hole right within an inch of his head. With cold sweat streaming down his face looking at the pen, the guy sighed and turned around and asked if she really needed to use Heaven's Door in a situation like this. The girl, chuckling, said that it was important and she was sure God would forgive her for such behavior. In fact, there is an anonymous report about the embezzlement of the military budget by Marquis Rex. That's why she came here to investigate. The guy asked if there was any evidence and the girl said she was still investigating. Then the guy asked that if it's not dangerous, if he really did embezzle the military budget, then he should pay for his crime. If they didn't have any proof of that, then they might have to use force. The girl was quiet for a second, and then said she was thinking of using the guy as bait so others could investigate. An indignant Chrono shouted that they weren't friends. Smiling evilly, the girl said that she thought she was his friend too, but that didn't mean she would always be. The indignant guy told her to stop acting like it was cool. Smirking, the girl said she was just kidding, then added that she wasn't putting him in danger. The guy asked suspiciously about the seriousness of her intentions, and she squinted and asked if he really doubted it. She's sure Rex knows there are advantages or disadvantages to killing Chrono, so would Chrono help them? Sighing, the boy smiled and then nodded. He will help them, but they shouldn't expect much. The girl smiled and said, he belittled himself too much. He won the military school exercises and even fought General Ignis, the imperial family, and the soldiers of the St. Algo Kingdom and won. He should be proud of himself. Smirking, the guy said that if he was so cocky, he would have died in the first battle. After that, he walked out and saw Mino waiting for him at the gate. The Minotaur asked him how it went, and the lad said it was fine, but he was a little tired. Then Mino said that they have been working since morning, and he is different from other generals. He even visited a subordinate half-elf to find out about his well-being. Well, Chrono thought that he was just doing his job. Although there are no such concepts as freedom, equality, and human rights in the Nef Empire, this world lacks common sense and is very different from his past world. But thanks to Tilia, he was able to arrange to visit the wounded. Mino said that if he wasn't a general, she wouldn't have done it for him. After all, instead of working hard at another job, they could work at a job that used brute force to earn 1 gold coin just for swinging a sword. The guy nodded and then suddenly stopped and said Mino said 1 gold coin. Did he know that a soldier's monthly salary was 2 gold coins? Mino sighed and said that, well, they already think it's normal, so it's good if they pay at least 1 gold coin. Chrono didn't expect to learn new information so soon. Mino, seeing him pensive, asked what the thing was, raising his head. The boy said that Tilia had asked him to find evidence of the embezzlement of the military budget. Startled, the Minotaur began to look around in panic and whispered that he shouldn't say such things in public. What if someone heard them? What if Mino himself turned out to be a traitor? Smirking, the boy said that if that was the case, he wasn't good at picking people. Awkwardly scratching his head, Mino said that from the looks of it, the general seemed to be interested in investigating. But why would he do that? The boy smiled and said that, well, Tilia had asked him to, and he didn't think he could be an ally of Marquis Urix. Besides, he wanted Mino and the others to treat him with more respect, and he wanted his father and mother to be proud of him. He wanted Baroness Kryford to be proud of him. Since I brought him into this world 3 years ago, Mino swallowed, and then, making up his mind, excitedly said that he would follow the general. Chrono was happy about that and nodded, then said that, well, they could infiltrate the accounting department. The surprised subordinate asked if it was right now, and now they were in the accounting department. Chrono opened the door and was immediately recognized. The guy asked where they were and the employee, not realizing what he was talking about, asked what he was saying. The guy punched the employee in the face, and the employee, not realizing what was wrong, wanted to get up but was immediately punched in the stomach. Chrono grimly asked about where the accounting documents were. They know that Marquis Eriks embezzled money from the military budget. Of course, the clerk denied it and said he didn't know what to talk about, General. At the same time, Mino grabbed his hands and the clerk shouted that they won't get away with it if Marquis Eriks found out about it. An enraged Chrono yelled at him to shut up or Chrono would burn his house to hell. The terrified employee yelled that his family had nothing to do with it. Do they really think they're going to get away with this? The guy then said that he was sure that Her Imperial Highness would pretend not to know even if the servant's family died the most miserable death. Startled, the employee shouted that it was a lie, but smiling evilly, Chrono asked that he would help them, then they would let him go for one day. The employee didn't understand what they were talking about, and the general kindly explained that he said he would give him a chance to start over in a new place. Sweating and nervous, the employee eventually agreed. And so, some time later, the Marquis entered the office, yelling about what General Chrono was doing. He would have to explain what it all meant. Smiling, Chrono said he was simply looking for evidence of embezzlement of money from the military budget. Startled, Marquis asked what he meant, because he had never embezzled money from the military budget. The guy, clutching the papers, said that maybe he did, but these papers were talking about something else. Maybe if the Marquis looked at them, everything would become clear. The Marquis, furious, shouted that the son of a bitch had betrayed him, to which the accountant shouted that he didn't want to die with the Marquis. Her Highness the Princess also arrived on time. Tilia smiled and said that it seemed to be a fun place and folded her arms on her chest and looked at the Marquis. The Marquis started to make excuses in a panic, saying it was some kind of mistake. But Tilia, of course, was adamant and said that since it was true, she thought the Marquis had proof that he had been falsely accused. Trembling, the Marquis said that his father and his grandfather, nay, all his relatives had risked their lives to put her father on the throne, and for their loyalty had received such a small reward. An angry Tilia pointed at him and screamed that that was why she had appointed him Marquis and Captain. And he was a stupid fat ass, betraying her father, their emperor. He should pay for what he did. Eventually those two were led away, and Tilia was satisfied. Looking at Chrono, she said contentedly that, as expected of her friend, she was grateful to him. Smiling, the guy said that all they had to do was wait and pray for whoever would be the next successor of the Marquis. Smiling, the girl said that he shouldn't worry about that and leave everything to her. Oh well, the case is closed, so that's fine. And while they were standing there, Shiro ran up to him and yelled that the alarm had gone up. And Layla said that she was unworthy to serve the general and she wanted to leave the army. A little time passed and here they visited Layla. The surprised girl looked at Chrono, who asked why she had decided to leave the army so suddenly. The girl was silent, and then the guy asked what those words meant, as if she was useless to him. Layla was surprised to ask who told him that, and then she guessed and looked at Shiro unhappily. At the same time, Chrono said that he wanted to know the reason for her leaving, otherwise he wouldn't accept her. At the same time, Shiro cried in fear on the sidelines. Layla clenched her fist and said that she was born in the slums. Her mother was a prostitute and her father was her occasional customer. Before joining the army, she was humiliated every day, so there was no way she, a dirty half-elf, was worthy of serving Chrono. With those words the girl started to leave. That was why she gave up. After all, she was a half-elf and the daughter of a prostitute, but he couldn't just let her go. Grabbing the girl's hand, the guy stopped her. He was sure he was being honest with himself, and that's why he wanted to tell Layla to stay. The girl, screaming, asked him to let her go because she's glad he wants her to stay, but she can't. She can't believe his words. She doesn't believe what is said for no reason. If this feeling is unrealistic, then it's safe to say that Chrono's entire life is a fake. Chrono decided that he needed to say something. Having made up his mind, the guy talked about right. The elf didn't get it, and the guy said that, referring to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, people should live in freedom and equality. But anyway, that's the reason. Layla wrinkled her nose and said she had never heard of this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The guy shuddered and then said that actually Lai came from another world. In his previous world, there were no commoners or nobles, and no matter how different people are from each other, they shouldn't make distinctions. It makes a lot of sense to them. The girl, cringing, asked why he was lying to her. Stunned, the guy said it wasn't a lie. I mean, yeah, sure, she doesn't believe he came from another world, but he doesn't want her to leave, and that's the truth. The girl sadly said she was a half-elf and the daughter of a prostitute, though he wanted her to stay. Smiling, the guy nodded and added that it didn't matter how she was born. All he wanted was for her to stay here. The girl asked if she could think for a while. She will tell you her decision in a little while. Smiling, the guy told her to take her time and think it over carefully. The girl nodded and left. Thus ended today's day, and night came. At the mansion, the guy sat on his bed complaining that he was tired, but he hoped the elf girl would stay after all. There was a knock on the door, and the lad looked at the door in surprise. Who would even be knocking at this hour? Well, he had nothing to lose, so he got up and opened the door, and when he saw Layla, he was very surprised. The surprised guy asked how she even got to him so late. Did she sneak up on him? The girl nodded and the guy told her to get in quickly. They stayed in the room. The girl apologized for that and then turned around and added that she had thought and decided after all and threw herself into the guy's arms and said she loved him too. The embarrassed guy supported her and asked about what she was saying. The girl asked if it bothered him and he said it didn't, or rather, but he was glad. Deep down, he didn't understand how it had come to this at all. He needed to resolve this misunderstanding. The guy asked her to sit down and she of course agreed. The girl was clearly nervous, and seeing that, the guy was nervous too, thinking that it was only getting more complicated. He definitely needed to do something. Now that he was looking at her so intently, she looked really quite beautiful. Damn it, that's not fair. Embarrassed, he turned his head, trying not to think of vulgarities. Suddenly the girl called out to him, and the guy turned around and saw Layla undressing. She even said that it was okay if she became one of his lovers because she wanted to be with him and her love belonged only to him. And he, of course, agreed. It was his first time since his reincarnation, but she had said that her love belonged only to him, so he couldn't disappoint her. Morning came, and they were alone in a room in the same bed. Chrono asked her if anything was bothering her, to which she replied that she was happy. She thought she could never experience something like this. She really wasn't thinking straight. But though he didn't try to solve the misunderstanding at all and let his instincts take over and made Layla his, the guy smiled and said that it was a big surprise for him. After that, the guy asked Layla if she was happy. The girl, smiling softly and embarrassed, said that she was really happy. There was a knock on the door and the guy flinched. Quickly standing up, he asked Layla to hide under the blanket and went to the door himself. When he had already opened the door, he saw a disgruntled Tilia behind him who, with her hands at her sides, asked him why he had closed the door. Smiling awkwardly, the guy said he didn't think it would be her. He then asked why she was here. The girl then said she wanted to talk about something. It wouldn't take long, so could she come in? The guy yelled that he just got up and the room was a big mess, so no. But she objected, but Chrono insisted on his point. Kicking her out, Chrono said he'd be out in a couple seconds anyway, so she should wait for him in the office. When he entered, he sighed heavily. When the girl called out to him, he smiled and said he had to go so she could make herself at home. But she shouldn't be too cocky just because they had become a couple. The girl nodded and then smiled gently. When he got to the office, the girl gave him the bad news. Oryx had committed suicide on his way to Imperial City. Apparently, he was hiding some kind of poison. The guy only shrugged his shoulders, and seeing this, Tilia said some kind of weak reaction he had. To which he awkwardly scratched his head and said that, after all, he had been sentenced to death. Chrono wouldn't be surprised if he tried to avoid it. The boy then asked what the good news was. Tilia smiled broadly and said that they had found a successor to Marquis Oryx. The guy strained a smile, realizing that nothing good was in store for him, and asked if he could go home. He felt sick to his stomach. Of course, the girl refused and said that Chrono would be the successor. Smirking, the boy said he guessed right. And then, scratching the back of his head awkwardly, the guy added that, but he couldn't. For one thing, he wasn't very good at managing estates, and he was thinking of becoming Baron Crawford in the future. Tilia then said that it would be a few years before he became Baronet of Crawford, didn't she? In the meantime, they need to decide what to do right now. Well, he finally admitted that she was right, but why him? It was hard for Tilia to explain, but in short, she had high hopes for him. Embarrassed, the guy said it wasn't that hard. Smiling, the princess asked him if he agreed, and the guy eventually agreed. In the end, Tilia helped him a lot. After that, the guy asked about the budget, and Tilia said there was none. She gave the entire fund to the employees she fired. Because of that, there was not a single copper coin left in the treasury of the Marquis Castle. The surprised fellow asked that he had dismissed the workers in the same way. Tilia explained that it wasn't the best idea to hire Marquis Oryx's servants because they might also turn out to be corrupt. Well, that seemed to be true, so the guy agreed. But there was still a problem. No money, no people. How should he even run the estate? Then the girl said he should collect taxes during October while he could. The indignant guy asked, how the hell is he supposed to survive? Sighing heavily, he relented and said that now he had to think about how to make some money for the budget. A while later, he used his subordinates to move things around. Nino asked where he should put the statue, and the guy told him to just leave it where it would look good. After that, the guy thanked everyone. Even though they had just recovered from that battle, they still agreed to help him. Of course, the subordinates didn't mind. Nino said that it wasn't worth thanking, but was the general sure he wanted to do it? All these items he collected in the center are from the Marquis collection. The guy, upon hearing this, said he had been appointed the next Marquis, and the soldiers were happy to hear this and congratulated him. But then the guy added that they didn't have any money, so he thought of selling the former Marquis collection. Of course, the soldiers exaggerated. They decided to take an inventory first. The guy turned to Leela and asked if she would help, and he would name the names of the items. She would just need to write down their names. The girl started to hesitate and the guy asked what was wrong. The girl apologized and said she couldn't write, and the guy was surprised. Nino explained that people who can write are quite rare. It is important for them to be able to count. The gnome then stepped forward and said that if Chrono didn't mind, he could write them down. He had been taught to write when he worked as a blacksmith. The guy was glad that Goldie could do it and said that he would be responsible for it then. Goldie took the sheet from his hand and said he was glad to be helpful. Number 1 nude statue. Number 2 a picture. Just like that the collection was listed and they stopped at number 20 an axe. Goldie immediately said that this weapon is a magical item created by a man named Kanachi. The boy asked about whether the word Kanachi was an ancient name for blacksmiths. The gnome then said that Kanachi was the first master, and he created a blacksmith sect. Surprisingly, there seemed to be some people who came from another world like him. Kanachi was fortunate enough to live a long life and succeed in society. He was even able to leave a mark on this world. The boy asked Mino to support him, and he of course agreed. When the Minotaur took it, the guy said that it belonged to him now. A surprised Mino asked if he meant it, to which the guy, smiling, said that it would be nice if the weapon could still be used. The guy then looked at the swords and asked Goldie if it was possible to mass-produce such weapons, to which the guy replied that they could produce them if they had a workshop. The guy took the bow and thought about the workshop. Even if he didn't want to spend a lot of money, it would be nice if his subordinates had quality weapons so they wouldn't just die for nothing. After making a decision, he said that they would build a workshop then. There would be a lot of work, so they needed to find craftsmen and people who could help with organizing the workshop. Goldie was happy to hear that and, smiling, told the general not to worry because he dreams of opening his own workshop. He will do his best, even if he has to grind his bones into powder. After doing the math, it turned out there were 660 of them. That was a lot, so the guy wondered how much it all cost. Goldie hesitantly said that he didn't think he could tell because he wasn't really good at counting since his specialty was making things. If they don't know the market price of these things, they can make them cheaper to sell, so. Suddenly Layla called Mr. Chrono and asked him how about asking the merchants to price them. Smiling, the guy said that was a pretty good idea, and Layla was glad. He had heard that when vendors came to a place, they would first ask other vendors to appraise their goods so that if they were suddenly in a certain place, they could sell them at a higher price. After a while, they came to a merchant's shop where they were greeted by a friendly old man. He invited them to Pick's trading store on Marquis Erich's property and asked what he could do for them. The boy, putting his hand on Lily's shoulder, said he would like to have a dress of some sort picked out for her. The old man quickly found the dress and asked if they had a place where she could try it on, to which the old man nodded of course. After that, he called an assistant named Bazed and asked her to take the lady to the examination hall. When they left, the guy said to the old man that he would like to talk to him about something, if he didn't mind. The old man turned to him and Chrono explained that one of their aristocrats wanted to sell some of their artwork, but they didn't know the market value. The old man said that it must be problematic for them, but he would be happy to help in any way he could. Chrono was pleased and apologized for the late introduction and gave his name. He then asked if he should say anything to the old man if he was Claude Crawford's son. Smiling, the old man nodded and apologized, calling himself Nicholas. The boy asked if they could talk about it a little later, and the old man nodded. At the same time, Layla came in wearing a new dress and asked how she looked. The guy was fascinated and of course told the girl that it suited her very well. The embarrassed girl thanked him. They ended up taking the clothes and hired an appraiser. A short while later, Nicholas was at his castle. When he saw the entire collection, he was stunned. Chrono handed him a catalog and informed him that the sale would take place tomorrow, of course. He didn't forget to thank the old man with a sweet smile that could only strain a smile. At night in his room, the guy sighed tiredly and said that tomorrow was a big day, and he hoped it would go well. Layla smiled and said that she was sure everything would go well because she had faith in Chrono-sama. The girl leaned into him and the guy rolled her over and kissed her. Feeling her lover sigh, Layla said that she was happy that Chrono loved her. The guy, of course, was happy too. Guy gently touched her thighs. He was very happy that he could make love to Layla, but he believed that it was love, if that's what Leela wanted. When he stopped, he asked Leela that she couldn't read and write right. Leela apologized for that and the guy said there was no need to apologize. After thinking for a moment, he stood up and asked her to come over. The girl didn't realize what was going on, but did as she was told. Sitting down at the table, the girl hesitantly asked that Chrono-sama didn't want to make love to her, to which the guy said that he thought why Layla shouldn't start learning to read and write. The girl looked at him questioningly, and the guy said that he thought it would help her in the future. Besides, he could help with her studies. The girl nodded and said she would try it, but she was sad. They started, of course, with the basics. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Chrono went up to the podium while everyone gathered in the hall. Someone asked what Chrono-san was going to do with them. Someone said that they would really get rid of them because they were no longer needed. Of course, another told him not to worry so much. Upon reaching the podium, Guy's first order of business was to welcome everyone and thank them for attending the event. He then announced that he had taken ownership of the Marquis Eric house and added that he would like to sell the property left to him by his predecessor at a fair price to help fund everyone's future endeavors. And of course, the way to do that they were probably already familiar with was an auction. The merchants were shocked, and Nicholas realized that the guy had scammed them. From the beginning, he had planned to attract more people to maximize profits by holding an auction. They started with a nude female statue made in the north by a sculptor living in a free city-state. Vino immediately delivered the statue to the podium, and the guy started with a starting bid of $400. The price quickly skyrocketed from $410 to $500 and was sold. Clenching her fist, Nicholas' assistant said they were out of time. Nicholas, sweating, said it looked like it. The bidding was going really fast and everyone was so desperate to win the lots. It turns out he had been doing the appraisal from the beginning for that very purpose. The price of some of these items is comparable to dirt, but he's questioning the billing of his name. Looks like Chrono read everything in advance. Terrifying man. The bidding took place and everyone got excited and raised the price. The next day the guy thanked Nicholas-san for a good job and asked about the auction, to which the guy smiled awkwardly and said that he thought Chrono-san knew Chrono himself well. The guy then said he called Nicholas-san today to talk about something else. It was about the Pix company. He would like them to be a supplier. A surprised Nicholas asked why they chose him, to which the guy replied that he liked the customer service. When Layla buys clothes and lingerie, she always looks adorable and secretly comes to see him. The guy said he would like them to start by supplying soldier food to just 650 men. How much would that cost? After the agreement, they thanked each other and Chrono asked about a 5-year contract. When they had more soldiers, they could increase the amount based on what Nicholas had just said. Nicholas wasn't sure if they would fire him immediately if there was a crop failure. Wouldn't he be fired immediately? Then the guy said that was why he wanted to sign a 5-year contract with him. Nicholas hesitated, because even during a good harvest, there are risks involved in storing it. It can be difficult. Seeing his concern, Chrono said that as long as he maintains his productivity and a certain level of quality, they will continue to buy from them. Can you imagine Chrono looking at that smiling boy? Nicholas swallowed, thinking that the boy could see right through him. In the end, he accepted the contract. As the boy said goodbye, he thanked Nicholas and Nicholas did the same. Then he asked Chrono-sama if he was really an aristocrat. Of course, Chrono had quit. In the past 2 days, the accumulated profit was 30,000. Well, Chrono thought this October would go well. The next task was to recruit people to serve as recruits for the army. The arrow hit the bullseye, but Layla didn't feel any emotion. After the training session, the girl started to leave, and then she was told that she had done a good job. Turning around, the girl saw the twins Erida and Danny. The girl cheerfully told her that she did a good job and then walked forward, joining her. One of them stretched and said they should go home and eat, and the other said cheerfully that she was glad she could finally fill her tummy properly. Danny then asked if their butts had been sitting too tight in their clothes lately, to which her sister agreed with her and Danny said it was good that it wasn't just her. The twins then asked Layla if she would be doing anything later. Erida asked if she would go to Chrono-sama's room, since she had fun with him yesterday, and the day before, didn't she? The girl embarrassedly nodded, and then remembered the first night and the next. They don't do anything but study at night, and they've never done that since they first met. She thinks she's still important to him, but their love and studies are also important to him. Erida, embarrassed, clutching her cheeks, asked if Chrono-sama wanted to call them. Then Danny told Layla that if she got tired, she could recommend them. Looking ahead, Danny said that someone was standing in front of the barracks, to which Erida said that it must be someone from the delivery service. Nicholas, noticing Layla, said he'd brought the ingredients and asked where Chrono-sama was. Layla asked for a moment, then pulled out a balloon. Erida, interested, asked what it was, to which Danny replied that it was a glass balloon. Layla then explained that it was a magical item for communication. Then she told Chrono-sama that Nicholas from the delivery service had brought the ingredients. The guy then asked Layla if she could pick them up for him, and the girl got worried. Chrono told her to just check the shipping papers, and if the numbers match, then everything can be picked up. It's pretty straightforward. Eventually Leela agreed, and Nicholas asked if he could leave them a check. The girl bowed and started with the wheat and checked to see if the numbers matched. A while later, the check was completed and Nicholas asked her to sign the document. The girl of course agreed, and when she signed, the twin sisters looked at her in surprise, asking when she had learned to write and read. The girl awkwardly replied that she had been taught by Chrono-sama. Squinting her eyes, Danny said that even though they were quite busy, apparently they still had a lot of free time on their hands. Erida then opened her mouth in surprise at the Imperial family, saying that Leo was actually only studying with Chrono-sama in his room every night. Seeing that Layla didn't deny it, the girl got angry with her. Danny screamed that yes, Layla could do anything. She couldn't believe that Layla had chosen to study. Then Erida asked if Layla was doing everything right. The embarrassed girl covered herself and said that she asked him and he told her that she had to study for the future. But she really didn't understand Chrono-sama's love. Isn't Chrono-sama strange? They didn't understand why he was helping her with her studies. Then Nicholas smiled and said that apparently Chrono-sama really loves Layla-sama. The surprised girl asked if Nicholas knew why Chrono-sama did that. The old man then said that he didn't know that much about it, but they could take a case, for example, in which she would leave the army and start looking for a new job. The elf looked at the old man grudgingly, but he smiled and continued, saying that without education it would be difficult. However, with a basic education, even Nicholas would be able to hire her. If she increases her knowledge, she could start her own business, or if she wanted, she could even start her own school. The surprised twins said they didn't know that studying meant so much. She wouldn't have to worry about anything for a long time. The elfess was pleased with what she heard, and now night had fallen and she continued to learn to read. And all gods had to follow the rules. Those who understood them became light. Those who rejected them fell into darkness. The light ones ascended to heaven, and the dark ones descended to earth. The girl pressed her lips together and turned to Chrono. Putting the book on the table, the girl said that she finally understood his love for her. The embarrassed girl said that Chrono himself had secured her future, to which the guy, smiling, said that with a basic education, her business opportunities would increase, and that was exactly what he thought. Then the girl fell into his arms and said she was ashamed. Even with all her thoughts about Chrono himself, she didn't realize the reciprocity of the feelings. The surprised guy asked if she was unhappy. Smiling, the guy stroked her cheek and said that since he was the owner of this house, he should think about it more. He's not as nice as Leela thinks he is. The girl smilingly supported him by his hand and asked him to show her all his love tonight, and they started loving each other. They loved each other passionately, tenderly, and affectionately. She suffered several times while living in the slums. In her case it was physical abuse, but now it was different. He had taken in a half-elf like her and secured her future. She felt so happy. Pleasure had gone to her and his head, and the night was sweet for both. In the morning when she awoke, she saw him. The first thing she saw was his sleeping and loving face. Smiling, she snuggled up to him and whispered softly that she loved him. The auction was successful. All that's left is to get people together. It looks like Tilia is going to leave her staff to the secretary, and he only needs to hire a maid, a cook, and an accountant. And since they're building a factory, they'll also need a blacksmith. Since Sheila has been in the trade for a long time, Kuro thought she could be a cook, so that's why he came here. Sheila said hello when she saw him, and Kuro's first thought was to ask how things were going. Coming out from behind the counter, the girl said that as he had seen for himself, she didn't have many customers, to which Kuro replied that, therefore, work was not going well. Sitting down next to him, Sheila said that everything would be fine if she had a patron. Kuro-sama recently became a marquis, didn't he? Maybe he could help his countrymen. The girl clutched at the boy's arm, making him embarrassed. But he didn't pull away, instead asking what she was talking about. Sheila then explained that she too came from the southern border, but when she had been there 10 years ago, Baroness Crawford had no children. Smirking, the guy asks if this is really blackmail. He was fed up with being the Baroness's son and had never been asked to hide it, but he didn't want anyone to find out. Looking up, Sheila said why would she want to blackmail him? She just wants him to be her patron. Kuro then asked if she had any debts, to which she nodded and said 100 gold. Smiling awkwardly, the guy said that was quite a lot, to which the girl shouted that she wanted to protect this place because she worked hard for it. But the owner died and she lost everything, and that wasn't fair at all. The girl smiled, put her hand on her chest and said that of course she wouldn't stay in his debt, he could do whatever he wanted. The surprised guy asked if she really meant that he could have fun with her in bed. The confused girl recoiled and screamed, asking what he was even thinking. Of course she didn't mean that. The guy said quite indifferently that he thought it was quite obvious, but the girl indignantly said he didn't get it. Then the guy asked what she meant. The girl hesitated, wanting to say something, but then, realizing there was nothing to say, just shouted that she just wanted to protect the store. The girl pressed her lips together, and then resignedly nodded, and then stood up from her seat. After that, with one hand at her side, the girl asked when she should start work, to which Kuro replied that he was glad she had agreed after all. She needed to get to work as soon as possible, but he would allow her to visit his store occasionally. Smiling, the girl thanked him and added that she would get to work very soon then. Kuro thought it would be harder to find people. In his previous world he would even have to advertise for jobs, and here not everyone could even read. Maybe that was for the best. Time to start looking for others. Suddenly someone asked what Marquis Lackey's was doing on the streets of the city, and the guy turned around and saw a beautiful lady in a black dress. But he didn't recognize her, so he immediately asked who she was. The demon lord smiled and said that she was gathering information. Kuro tilted his head and asked about that. Then why did she choose to talk to him? The girl smiled coquettishly, walked up to him and gently ran her finger across his chest, saying that he was the same person that General Ignis lost to. So she was interested in him then. And what kind of people he's looking for. The guy looked at her in surprise and she turned around and said he had recently become a marquis. Probably needed an accountant. Smiling awkwardly, the guy nodded, and then the girl asked if he wanted her to give him the information. Of course, it wasn't free, but don't stress so much, as she could tell him about her charges. Just not about prostitution. The girl pretended to look at him indignantly and asked if he was discriminating against her profession. To this the guy said he couldn't hire her wards, it was too dangerous. Then the girl said she could forget it. How could she sell them if he didn't want to tell her anything? But does she know that she has slaves, very intelligent slaves? Not many of them, but they are still there at 20 gold pieces apiece. Although the guy was worried about their fates, he couldn't afford it. Besides, he didn't want to become a slave owner, though he thought it would be nice to have a trusted accountant. The girl asked if anything was wrong with him, and the guy scratched his head tiredly and said it wasn't worth talking to him. The girl said she does have people like that. Besides, it's legal to be a slave owner in this country, so he should think twice. She will contact him when she finds an experienced accountant. But if he already has such a person, she can decline the offer, and if he doesn't, he can find her one. Seeing how confident she was in her words, the guy decided to give her a chance and nodded. After that, he went to the fortress wall, but it didn't do much good. He told Mino-sen that he was looking for people, and it turned out that there were some people who couldn't return to the battles. Then he decided to hire 30 elves and dwarves as servants. Mino asked about the general going to meet Layla. Turning around, the guy said that he didn't want to distract her right now because she was currently practicing. Mino then pointed out Layla at the archery range, and Kuro said that she was good at archery. Mino explained that she was also good at magic. She has saved them many times with her help. She has such willpower that Mino wouldn't be surprised if she became a centurion one day. The boy was somehow saddened thinking about why she's trying so hard. Maybe it was because she was a half-elf. Guy smiled and told Mino that he would let him promote 100 to captaincy, though 50 would be enough. Of course, Mino was grateful. Finally, Kuro said goodbye to the Minotaur and left. But Kuro thought it was fine, but he hadn't told Tilia about the workshop yet. When he was walking down the street, he saw that girl with the flowers. He saw her selling flowers and it looked like she was sick. Suddenly, a carriage pulled up to him, and the guy flinched and shouted to her to be careful. The flowers fell, but Kuro still managed to save her. The guy asked if she was okay, and someone from the carriage yelled for them to see where the rod was. Meanwhile, the girl saw the flowers on the ground and rushed to the ground in terror. Seeing them spoiled, the girl said with a tremor in her voice that she would have to sell them. The boy sat down beside her, supported her by the hand and said that he would buy everything from her, including the basket. The girl was delighted at these words, and then when she saw him she apologized, saying she couldn't charge him for it. The boy wondered if he sounded like an aristocrat now. He would never have thought of himself that way. Feeling awkward, the girl said she didn't even know. Then the guy asked what she would say to him buying her a new basket and flowers, then she could work off what she lost. But she had nothing to worry about, she wouldn't owe anything. The girl hesitated, but the guy held out his hand to her and, smiling, asked her to accept his offer. The girl finally agreed, and then the guy introduced himself and asked her what her name was. The girl said her name was Allison and thanked Kuro, seeing that she was breathing heavily. He said she needed to rest and he could walk her home. The girl hesitantly said that he had already done so much for her, but the guy assured her that she shouldn't worry about him. She ended up climbing on his back and apologized for causing so much trouble. Now Kuro wondered who raised such a child. They went into the slums of the city and soon made their way to one of the dilapidated houses. A woman was lying on a bed knitting something. Seeing her daughter in the arms of a stranger, she ran up to them, concerned, asking what was wrong. Kuro placed Allison on the bed and explained to Madame that he thought she was unwell, so he decided to take her home. The woman nodded and hugged her daughter, saying she didn't know who he was, but she was grateful. The guy said it was dangerous to be out on the streets at night, so they should stay home. The woman thanked him and the guy smiled and said that before he left, he could talk to her. The woman asked anxiously. Allison was put to bed, and they sat down at the table. The guy then asked her if she had worked for aristocrats before. The woman, shuddering, said he had correctly noticed. She then introduced herself as Alyssa and added that she had been a maid for the Marquis. But then her health deteriorated and she was forced to leave. The guy nodded and then introduced himself as Chirono Crawford and added that he himself had recently become a Marquis. The woman shuddered and asked about what had happened to the previous Marquis, to which the guy said that he had been accused of corruption and had committed suicide. The woman got sad somehow and the guy added that he had accused him. The surprised woman looked at him and asked why he was saying that. Smiling, the guy said he wondered how she would react. Maybe she wouldn't pay attention. The guy thought she would start defending Marquis honor, but it seems like she's just grieving for him. But the guy said he wanted to get back to the conversation. All the previous employees were fired and now he's looking for new ones. Doesn't she want to be a maid again? Cairo thought it would be great to hire an experienced maid. The woman hesitantly said that it would certainly be an honor, but she couldn't work. Cairo added that despite that, his offer still stands. As soon as she was well enough, he would be expecting her at his place. The woman looked up doubtfully and asked why he was doing this. Smiling, the guy looked at Allison and said that she had raised a beautiful daughter. He thinks she will do a great job as the head of the family. Looking at her sleeping daughter, the woman, having made her decision, said she agreed and then thanked him. He returned home with them and told Tilia all the details. Empire 430, early June. The meat was elegantly sliced and picked up with a fork. Cairo was happy from the bottom of his heart. After all, he hadn't eaten meat in 2 months, and here it was so delicious. Tilia, who was sitting opposite, was elegant like a true aristocrat. After tasting a piece, she put aside her fork and knife, and after gently wiping the oil from her lips, she raised her head. After that, the girl said that she admired how quickly Cairo had found servants and cooks, and the opening of the workshop was also a big deal. She couldn't help but pay her respects. However, Tilia squinted at Sheila and asked if he could have found a more experienced cook. It seems he chose her based on some of her other qualities. Of course, Sheila was embarrassed by the remark. Frowning, the girl said that he was such an adult and he was making silly mistakes. He still has to learn and learn. He should fire her first. At this time, Sheila, smiling, apologized and said that she and Cairo-san were bonding. Tilia raised one eyebrow, and Cairo explained that she was working to pay off a debt. What was her debt? A logical question was asked, and the girl's response was that Sheila had a debt of 500 gold. Squinting her eyes, the princess asked if it was worth it. At the same time, Sheila put her charms on the guy's head and, smiling caustically, said that the princess wouldn't understand the charms of maturity. The confused guy asked what she was talking about, to which she replied that he wasn't eating right, so she could feed him. At the same time, the princess twisted her mouth and forcefully sliced the steak, while the maid behind her was annoyed. Sighing heavily, Tilia asked about the older maid. The guy explained that the doctor said she would need a little more time, but everything was going according to plan. Tilia nodded. A short while later, he visited the workshop where Goldie worked. When Goldie saw Cairo, he asked if he had come just to look. Nodding, the guy said he was curious how things were going at the workshop, to which Goldie said they were still in the beginning stages, but he didn't think there would be any problems. After that, Goldie handed him a dagger, asking him to rate it. The guy took the dagger, pulled it out, and it immediately glinted. Goldie said it was the first weapon forged in this workshop, and he would like to give it to Cairo-san. Looking at the tip, Cairo said that it looked pretty sharp, to which Goldie said that this dagger was forged using a new method. They are also working on swords, spears, and armor. The guy nodded and said that was impressive. If they were of high quality, they could start replacing the old weapons. The guy then asked about the bows, and Goldie said that he had already found the materials and it was a trifling matter. After that, Goldie cautiously said that, but he felt that the elves' strength would not be enough to fulfill their potential. After thinking about it, the guy said that he hadn't thought of that. All elves are so thin. But he thought that elves could use any kind of bow, but it seems he was wrong. Then Cairo asked if they could make them light. Goldie, with a motivated clenched fist, said he would try. He's a blacksmith, after all, and had already figured something out. Smiling, the guy said that was good, then added that he wanted to discuss something else. The surprised blacksmith asked what the gentleman wanted them to make the paper. Cairo nodded and said that they could use it for their own purposes, and it would be profitable to sell it. Goldie agreed, but it could take years to create the technology. Cairo then said that he already knew the technology, much to the smith's surprise. No one had ever made paper in the Empire, and so it was imported from the north. Paper is actually very expensive, but if the plant can do its job, it will benefit from it. He began to explain. First they must extract the birch bark, then mix it with the ash of the plant, bring it to a homogeneous state, and then soak it in a wooden box. And that's it. After listening to him, Goldie said that was too vague an explanation. Smiling awkwardly, the guy said that well, he'd only seen it once. The blacksmith then said that something told him that it was doable, so he would do his best. Nodding, the boy said he was counting on him. As they left the workshop, he saw a very expensive carriage, and then out of which came the woman who had caught him some time ago. Going up to her, the lad said hello to her, and the girl said she was glad to see the young Marquis. The lad asked if she had come with an offer, and she leaned over, nodded, and said she had found a slave to match his request. Afterward, they visited her store. The surprised guy, embarrassed, said it was a brothel. Smirking, the girl told him not to be so nervous, even though it was very nice. Then, smirking, the girl said that if he didn't like the word brothel, he could call this place a gentleman's paradise. Smirking, the guy said that didn't change the point. Sitting down on a chair, the girl said that wasn't true. You could put it this way, it's not selling your body, it's helping those in need. The guy looked at her skeptically, to which the girl said they were looking for a new home for the slaves. After that, one slave girl was brought to the podium. The girl introduced herself as Shia and added that she works for the Baron as a maid. The host said that Ms. Shia is in good health and the starting price for this innocent girl is 10 gold pieces. The woman said that she was a healthy virgin. The guy looked at her questioningly and the woman explained that all slave traders say that. They often lie or else no one will buy their goods. The boy asked if she knew the name of the slave girl he wanted, to which she nodded and said that she had heard that the slave girl had studied abroad under the name Elena. While the wait lasted, Elena herself sat in the cage with sad eyes. She didn't know why she was here and felt fear and humiliation at her situation. She is Elena Graphias, the daughter of a baron from the Empire of Cepheus. Her father was conservative but a fine scholar. When she said she wanted to study abroad, he supported her. She chose the city of Amai on the border of Eastern and Western civilization. She studied foreign languages, customs, art theory, and more. But arithmetic was her steed. 3 years later, she was informed of her father's death, and she thinks that's where it all began. She dreaded coming home after a 3-year absence, but Philip and his uncle were happy to see her. Philip was her fiancé, and he was going to be a knight. He was her parents' choice, but she still loved him. Thanks to him, she was able to recover quickly after her father's death. But soon the estate was attacked by bandits. All the servants were killed and sold into slavery. She wanted to die, but she believed Philip would save her. She asked for it in this nightmare, and so when the light illuminated the cage, she shouted to Philip to save her. But the man, looking at her coldly, asked if she had really gone mad from the beating. The girl backed away in fear, screaming at him to stay away from her and being poked with a stick to shut up and walk. Falling over in pain, she still couldn't fight back. The man said they were going to an auction and it was her finest hour. As they walked past the mirror, she saw herself, all battered, crumpled, bruised, and abrasion. She was stunned and wondered what was wrong with her. She had been told it was all because she had been naughty, but she couldn't believe it. No, that wasn't her. How could she be like this? So ugly. She was told that she claimed to be smart, but in fact she turned out to be no smarter than the other slaves. The girl could not appear in such a state and rushed to the man, asking for permission to wash herself because no one would buy her in such a state. Irritated and disgusted, the man kicked her, shouting that she was a filthy pig, and then, grimacing, said she had nothing to worry about because if she didn't buy, he would beat her to death. She would be in agony for a long time. She kind of wanted to die, didn't she? So she can wait a little longer and she'll be fine. The announcer said the last slave girl was coming on stage, and Elena was nudged in the back. But her appearance and odor certainly didn't attract attention. She had seen these aristocrats. She had seen what she had once been. She saw the expensive clothes, the clean bodies, and compared to them she was dirty and stank. As she walked past them, they grimaced and some started to walk away. She realized that no one would buy her like this. She said her name in desperation. She had studied abroad and she counted well. But who would believe her like this? Who would believe in this filthy slave? She didn't believe she would be found. The host announced a price of 10 gold pieces for her. But, of course, everyone cringed at her appearance. She was once the daughter of a respectable man, but now she was just a filthy animal. Why? Why didn't the bandits kill her? Why didn't she kill herself? Why does she cling to life? If she's just a filthy slave, wouldn't she be better off dead? Feeling weak in her legs, she fell to her knees and screamed. She lowered her head and, trembling, she begged. She begged to be bought. She would do anything to be bought. After all, everything else in the world was completely unimportant right now. She didn't want to die in the arms of a merchant. Not like this. And there she was, hand raised. Someone had said to buy her. She couldn't believe it. Lifting her head, she saw the figure of a guy in black. But because of what she saw, because of the beating, vaguely, she didn't recognize the face. But it was a relief. She felt all the heaviness gone from her. Her eyelids grew heavy, and the world turned black. There was steam coming from the bathtub, and Elena was nice. Because Sheila was washing her so roughly, she felt pain. When Sheila heard her complaint, she said that if she felt pain, it meant she was alive. What a stench. How long had it been since she had bathed? How was she supposed to know? She was curious and asked who the guy was anyway. Sheila asked her what she meant by Kuro-san. And then, smiling, she said that he's a bit of an odd aristocrat. He's always kind to the commoners and polite to his subordinates. A month passed, and Aline was no more. Soon the answer to her letter was to come, and she was very much looking forward to it. She really wanted to see Philip, but he is a knight and probably very busy. So was her uncle. A voice was heard outside the door asking her if she was still awake, and the girl, shuddering, said she was. When Kuro entered, she asked expectantly if the answer had come. Kuro was sad. The guy said that, well, since she brought it up, he should tell her. The guy said that he had asked the man from the association to deliver her letter, but he couldn't do that since she was presumed dead. The surprised girl flinched and then asked why that was so. She is alive. Kuro explained that after she and her relatives were attacked by bandits, she was considered dead. Of course, Elena wanted to urgently correct this misunderstanding, and wanted to run away, but Kuro stopped her. The girl screamed to be let go because he promised he would let her go home. Kuro hesitantly said he would like to, but the situation had changed. The girl asked what he was talking about and suddenly shuddered, and goosebumps ran through her body. Sheila asked Kuro-san to tell her the truth and he scratched his head awkwardly. The girl hesitantly asked what other truth, to which Sheila looked at her skeptically and said it was time she knew the truth. The boy said, well, that's the way to do it, and then said, Aline, she was set up by her uncle and fiancé. It was shock at first, and then denial. She didn't believe it. They would never do such a thing. Of course, Kuro hadn't lied, and just calmly explained that they wanted to get their hands on the Graffia family's wealth. Her uncle might have embezzled their fortune, but she was the official heiress. The surprised girl asked about Philip. If he married her, he would be heir too. They had nothing to lose. Then the guy said that Elena had studied abroad, hadn't she? The girl nodded, and then the guy continued, saying that they realized she was pretty smart, and wouldn't let them dispose of the inheritance the way they wanted. And the fact that she and Philip were getting married wouldn't change anything. The girl shuddered and denied it, but then her mother came to her mind. Anxiously, she asked about her mother and Kuro said that she might have been killed. But that was unknown for now. The girl was desperate. Kuro explained that by killing her mother, no one would be able to prove that she was Elena Graffias. Kuro was afraid that she would be killed too, because that would get rid of the only witness. Shaking with rage, the girl clenched her fists and screamed at him to get out and leave her alone. Night came, and Elena was still lying with her face buried in the pillow. A knock sounded and Sheila brought her dinner, but she said she didn't want it. Sheila raised one eyebrow and then walked over, placing the tray on the table and sitting down in a chair. She sighed loudly and asked Elena if she had thought about what she was going to do. The girl said she couldn't think about anything at all right now. Her uncle and fiancé had given her into slavery, and she didn't even know if her mother was alive. She doesn't care what happens to her. Then Sheila said that even if her mother is killed, she should not give up. Startled, the girl stood up abruptly and shouted that she knows that without Sheila, of course she wants to avenge her mother, but simply there is nothing she can do. She's lost her status, her inheritance, and she can't even prove that she's Elena Graffias. How can I get back at her if she has nothing? Sighing, Sheila poked her head and asked why she needed her head then. Even after losing everything, she could get revenge, for no one could take away her mind. Wiping her tears, the girl whimpered, and seeing this, Sheila, sighing again, asked if she would have dinner. Aline nodded. Eating the potatoes fueled her rage against those bastards. She wouldn't forgive them, never would, and she would make them regret what they had done. Empire, 430, the first days of June. Grinning, Elena asked what the wood and stove tax meant. Sheila sighed and said that's exactly what it means. Here they are paying the tax for firewood and stove, and the newlyweds even paid for their first wedding night. They sat in the office. Sheila was helping Elena sort through paperwork, and the guy was lying on the couch reading something. Irritated, Elena, scratching the back of her head with her pen, said that there are taxes, and once again taxes. You have to pay taxes for absolutely everything. Strangely, no one rioted. Sheila said that yes, they weren't that big, and even if they were raised, it wouldn't change anything. Turning around, the girl asked Kira if he would change anything, to which he smiled and said that he cancelled all those stupid taxes. He didn't want to end up like his predecessor. Well, he hoped it would improve the economic situation. Smirking, the girl asked him what on earth he was thinking about that. Smiling, the guy explained that when taxes go up, people have less money, and thus their spending power decreases. This has a negative effect on the economy. Elena said with surprise that he had thought it through well. Sheila said that if the guy became a lord, they would reopen the store. To which the guy awkwardly scratched the back of his head and said that if he became a lord, he didn't think anything would change. Sheila, of course, did not deny it, but did not agree. Sheila approached the guy, leaned over and stuck out her breasts, and then asked in a sweet voice if she was right. The guy waved her off, saying he wouldn't lend her any money, even with her sweet voice. Sighing, the girl sat down on the couch and said that it looked like she would have to wait for the end of the season. Elena looked at her unhappily. The imperial family, why would she need to increase her debt? After all, it was already worth 100 gold. Grunting unhappily, Sheila said that she didn't need to be constantly reminded of her debt. Elena then said that it was her job now. After all, she was an accountant who would even agree to give 10 gold to someone like her. Smiling, Sheila said that means she is worth it. But how much is Elena herself worth? Gritting her teeth, the girl embarrassedly said 10 gold. Sheila looked indifferently at her breasts at what she thought was all fair. The embarrassed girl backed up and shuddered and asked where she was looking. The guy asked Elena how much tax revenue was expected this year, and she held up the sheets and said she would tell him now. She has taken out a couple of taxes, so there will be less revenue. Taking all this into account, she assures him that this year will bring in 60,000 gold pieces. The guy, excited, said that's not bad, he'll be able to pay the salaries of the staff. Looking at him, the girl said that of course, if all these records are correct, it's still hard to say for sure. Smiling awkwardly, the guy said that Elena seemed to take the matter seriously, to which she said that he himself said that the Marquis was stealing from the budget, so she can't trust those records. The guy nodded, saying that was fair enough. He then picked up the sheets and said tiredly that there was so much work to be done if his idea succeeded. Elena asked him with interest where he got the paper from, if he wanted to tell her. Then the guy said that it was made by workers from his workshop and he wants to set up production. Looking at him, the girl said that, of course, if all these notes are correct, it's hard to say for sure yet. Elena stood up, stunned, from her seat, the imperial family, from the fact that he was really serious. Walking over to the sheets, she picked one up and, inspecting it, said that the texture and color were certainly a bit unusual, but it was definitely paper. Sheila asked what was wrong with that, to which the girl replied that the way the paper was made was kept secret. Elena asked how the Empire manages to make it, and the guy replied that it's made from tree bark. They make it, even despite his vague instructions. Sheila, looking at the paper, asked in surprise, "What do you mean made from tree bark?" But Elena said it was expensive. The guy shook his head, saying that if they hired 10 laborers at the rate of 1 gold piece a day, and sold 1 sheet of paper for 1 copper, they could cover the cost of production. 10 gold coins is 1,000 coppers. The surprised girl asked if it was really 1 copper coin per sheet. Smiling, the guy said that the price was set based on the cost of production, so it would likely increase in the future. Sheila got up and told Empire to have fun and she would go back to the kitchen. When she left, Elena clung to Kuro and said he was so nice, to which the guy replied that Goldie was nice, not him. But the girl grabbed his hand and excitedly said that no, he's the one succeeding. There's a lot that can be done with his abilities. Looking at this suspicious girl, the guy wondered what she was up to. Suddenly a voice came out and the guy holding a communication ball said it was his. The guy asked Layla if something was wrong. If it had to do with the food supply, she should talk. But Layla didn't let him finish, shouting that it wasn't. As it turns out, the brazen bandits attacked the slave trader. He's complaining about it now. The surprised guy jumped up and said what was about to happen. The slave trader, seeing him, immediately rushed to him and pleaded that the bandits had stolen all his money and goods and if she didn't return everything, he would. The guy nodded and said he understood everything and would try to help. It's hard to imagine what Elena went through, but he has to protect legitimate slave traders. The slave trader thanked him and left. Layla then called out to him, and the guy, smiling, walked over to her and, stroking her ear, thanked her for the message. The girl, feeling a pleasant tickle, smiled and said it was her duty. The guy felt a glance and looked that way and saw the twins staring at them. Afterward, the guy told Layla that it was good that things were relatively safe here. The girl nodded and then said that even though she had been living here for 5 years, bandits had only attacked once. The boy said that he thought it had come from the kingdom of St. Algo. But Layla, interrupting, said she wasn't sure since it had been over 2 months since the conquest. Then, realizing she had interrupted, she apologized, snickering slightly. The hero smiled and said it was nothing of the sort. She could tell him anything that seemed important to her. Suddenly, Tilia walked over and said he was late. The guy smiled and said that this slave trader was his subordinate. Tilia, frowning, said, observing that he was here with the half-elf. The girl flinched, but then pulled herself together and apologized. Sure enough, the guy told her to stop. Tilia said she didn't know what he was thinking. But half-elves aren't liked in their company, to which the guy said so. But that doesn't mean they should be mistreated. Tilia then said that she saw a half-elf in his room this morning. The outraged girl screamed that if the rumors spread, her reputation would be ruined. He may think that love between 2 races is possible, but it is not. He should think about status first, feeling that it would take a long time. Guy stopped her, saying he understood, then said it was better to discuss what had just happened. Gritting her teeth, Tilia nevertheless backed off and said that he was right. She then added that according to what she had been told, the slave trader had been attacked by a group of cavalrymen in leather armor. That's how light cavalry soldiers dressed. Or maybe that's what they wanted them to think. Then the princess asked what was the point of the bandits disguising themselves. The guy said that one of his co-workers had disappeared after the uprising. He went to ask for help and no one had seen him since. Maybe he became a bandit and is now disguising himself. Sighing, Tilia put one hand to her side and said that if that was the case, the Empire soldiers would find him and kill him. Smirking, the boy said he hoped that wouldn't happen. The guy was lying on the couch with his face tucked into a pillow. Looking at him, Elena asked what had happened to the laborer, and the guy said that his money and goods had been stolen. Having put the documents in order, the girl laughed angrily, shouting that this is how it should be and the scoundrel got what he deserved. And God will punish all slave traders, for the Aranai deserve to be punished. What a nice day. Seeing her joy, the boy sighed and said he wished he could be so happy. Then Elena asked what was the matter, and the guy said that if everyone knew about it, the trade would stop. Elena, after thinking about it, went over to him and leaned over him and asked that he was an aristocrat, wasn't he? The guy nodded, and then the girl said that she thought all nobles were greedy and bad. Smiling, the guy said that it's all stereotypes, well or not. He doesn't know about other nobles, but his stepfather was like that. The girl stood up on the couch and then on top of him and sat down and said she was very grateful to him. He bought it even though it looked lousy. He'd even given her a job, so she wanted one. There was a knock and a maid came into the room, and seeing them in this position, she didn't even flinch and smiled and said that the food was ready, but they didn't seem to care right now. And then she asked if she should stay and watch. The guy flinched and Elena went pale. Then the guy asked her if someone was really making her watch, and the girl nodded, scratching the back of her head awkwardly. The guy said it wasn't necessary, and they were on their way. Walking up, the guy asked her that today was her first day of work, right? The maid smiled, nodded and thanked him for hiring her. He could count on her loyalty. The boy smiled contentedly and nodded. Turning around, he looked at Elena and she was all shook up. The guy asked her if she was okay, to which she gritted her teeth and yelled that he made her back hurt. The week flew by very quickly and the princess became irritable. Why was it like this? Why couldn't they catch them? They had attacked 3 more slave traders in the last week. Where were her subordinates even looking? The guy, seeing her so nervous, asked her to calm down. The indignant girl yelled that she was calm, and then I asked him if he had any thoughts. The guy nodded, but then added that since she never listens to him, he didn't tell her anything. The girl looked at him irritated and the guy asked if he should tell him and the girl nodded. The guy then said that the Empire needed to find the bandit base, and the girl asked how to do that. Kuro then said she should know that keeping horses is not an easy task. We need a stable, water and food. The princess realized that he was suggesting looking for places that would meet those conditions, and the guy nodded. Kuro thinks he knows where they are now. He found one village on old maps. The surprised girl looked at him incredulously and said he couldn't have said before. The Empire needs to prepare and find people. Well, the guy had already prepared, so he just showed everything to Tilia. The surprised girl asked him when he would have time to prepare, and Kuro said with a smile that he had enough time. They have 350 men under their command. They decided to leave the city at night, and then they took a carriage ride. It seemed like it was summer now, but it was still so cold. When Kuro heard her, he said that he should have brought warm clothes with him. At the same time, Layla turned to him and the guy looked at her. Layla asked if he minded lying under the blanket with her, and sure enough, the guy nodded and thanked her. The princess was annoyed and the twins were jealous. Seeing that Tilia was shivering from the cold, the guy handed her his cloak and she thanked him, smiling. The guy said there was no reason for her to be cold. Embarrassed, Tilia put on the cloak and said that it was warm despite its scuffiness. The guy then said that he got that cloak from his father. Now it was something of a family heirloom. He even liked the scuffiness of it. Well, he'd better keep quiet about it, or they'll come up with something else. Layla snuggled up to him and asked embarrassedly if he was cold, and the guy, smiling, asked about it. And she shook her head and the guy, smiling, said he wasn't cold either. The twins squinted and said that they were always cold in the shower. Looking at them, the guy thought he had seen them somewhere before. When they were noticed, the twins cheered and introduced themselves sharply. Giggling, they embarrassingly said that if anything, they were free, he could call them anytime. The guy sighed and asked what they were talking about. Smiling, the girl said she knew what she was talking about. He understood, and one of them said she hoped he liked to have a good time, and the other that she hated the modest ones because they were so boring. The sister, of course, said she thought so too. Well, maybe she didn't. The boy, feeling awkward, wondered which one was which. Layla, looking sternly at the guy, told him to ignore them, and he asked if she was sure. The twins, approaching sharply, said that it was indeed about them she had just said. Though if they had been in Layla's shoes, they would have said the same thing. The girl said that was exactly what they wanted. They saw Kuro-san scratching her behind her ear. It wasn't hard for Kuro, so he did as they asked and they thanked him happily, saying it felt so good. The guy turned around and asked Tilia if she wanted her ear scratched too, and she said, embarrassed, that he was completely crazy. She was amazed at his coolness before the fight. Then the guy said that he didn't really want to go into battle. He was counting on them to surrender, but if not, he would have to fight. That's why he took up arms. Annoyed, Tilia said he was so naive, to which the knight replied that he just didn't want sacrifices. The girl looked at the sword and said that it has the emblem of the Empire on it. She got it from her father too. The guy picked up the sword and said it was from the collection of a former marquis. Well, the sword would come in handy. The next morning, the troops arrived at the village where the bandits' base was located. After looking around the fortress, the guy said that they seemed to be there, to which the girl nodded, saying that it was possible. Layla informed Kuro that someone was walking towards them. Looking in that direction, the guy saw an old man. The twins raised their bows and asked if they would kill or capture. Tilia replied that it was better to take captive and torture. Looking at their reaction, the boy asked if they couldn't just talk. The old man approached and asked what brought them to the village, since there were so many of them. The villagers might be related to the bandits, but they didn't have time to find out. The guy just bluntly said they were looking for bandits. Seeing him panicking, Kuro realized that the old man seemed to know something. So the guy asked him to tell him about them, and the old man nodded and the prince asked them to go to his house. When they entered the house, the old man explained that the bandits had taken over that fortress about a month ago. Kane Dono, 20 subordinates and their slaves. When the guy asked about Kane, the old man explained that he was the head of the bandits. The old man heard that he was a mercenary in his homeland. Now he kidnaps slaves from cruel slave traders and asks the villagers to look after them. At first the old man refused, but when he saw these poor girls he agreed. Kuro said he agreed and the sweating old man said that Kane Dono is not evil. His subordinates have never hit anyone or stolen anything. Kane Dono even pays him to look after the slaves. Tilia asked if they are protecting them. Last week they attacked 3 slave traders. The surprised old man said that, but Kane Dono would never do that. Then the old man said that a week ago they teamed up with another gang and maybe these attacks were organized by them. Kane-san doesn't tell him anything. He doesn't want to involve the villagers in his affairs. Kuro realized that this old man is actually protecting the bandit. Kuro then said that he understands everything, but he can't leave it like that. especially when the villagers are harboring slaves. Frightened, the old man shouted that all responsibility lies with him because he is the head of the village. He begged not to touch the other villagers. Bending down, he also asked to give Cain Dono a chance to atone for his sins. The guy nodded and said that they are not monsters. However, there is one important condition. If they surrender and don't fight, they will talk to them. But if something goes wrong, the residents will have to evacuate. This is very important. The old man said he would pass on his words to Cain, and the boy asked if he was afraid. The old man smiled and said that if he got killed, it meant he was a bad judge of character. The guy nodded and told them to proceed. Kuro thought to himself that this kind really seems to be trusted. But then why did he become a bandit? Tilia asked Kuro if he thought they would surrender. The guy just went into hiding. He doesn't know. Well, if they don't surrender, they can wipe them out. It's been 3 hours since the village chief left. Mino approached the general and said that maybe they should break camp and take a break. Shaking his head, the guy said they should wait a little longer. There is only one road leading to the fortress. As long as they are here, no bandits will be able to escape. The old man came soon after and apologized for keeping me waiting. The guy turned around and said he was glad the old man was still alive. The prince of the imperial family spoke to Cain, to which he said that Cain refused to surrender until he talked to Kuro. But Kuro assumed that would be the case, and so, without flinching, he asked where the conversation would go. The head of the village said it was at his fortress. You can only take 2 people with you. Mino immediately objected, and Kuro said they wanted to see if their intentions were serious. But the guy decided to take Mino-san with him. Well, he was thinking about who else to take. But then Layla stepped forward. The girl, putting her hand on her heart, said that she realized that it could be dangerous, but it doesn't scare her. The guy thought that if it was a trap, he, as a man, would be killed at once. But Layla, the girl, pulled out a knife and said she knew what he was thinking, and, sticking the dagger into her enemy's throat, said she could stand up for herself. Her body belonged entirely to Kuro. The guy flinched and, clenching his fist, told her to put the blade away. Then, with a sigh, he told Mino and Layla that they were coming with him. The road to the top turned out to be quite steep. If they were to throw rocks at them, it would be over. After examining the gate, Kuro said it was a real fortress. If they tried to take them over, a lot of people would get hurt. But suddenly the door started to open. A man led them in among the bandits who were smiling evilly. Someone stepped forward and said that it looked like the 3 of them had come as requested. Mino and Layla immediately stood in front of Kuro, blocking the enemy. But the man in front told them to relax. It was Cain, the head of the bandits. The guy introduced himself as Kuro, the Marquis of Alakis. A surprised Cain said that, so he was the one who repelled the Algo Kingdom's army. Such a young guy. After that, he asked them to come in, and now they were sitting in front of the negotiation table. Cain said that the village head told them that they should surrender. The guy, after looking around and seeing bandits everywhere, turned around and said that if they surrendered, he would give them a chance to redeem themselves. Of course, everyone was outraged and shouted that these slave traders, freaks, nothing to blame them for, they had done the right thing. Cain raised his hand and asked for silence, and then, smirking, he said that usually aristocrats attacked at once, even without warning. Like, give them everything they have and then they'll be pardoned. The guy shook his head, saying he just didn't want any unnecessary sacrifices, and he was glad that no one was hurt during their attacks either, so the punishment for them won't be as severe. He's just advising you to surrender. Cain said that he was certainly grateful for the offer, but he had to decline. Mino, enraged, kicked the table, breaking it, and shouted that he was in no position to refuse. The bandits immediately surrounded them, at which point Cain apologized for offending them. His subordinates are always ready to fight, but honestly, he doesn't think they will win. However, if the Marquis accepts their terms, they will have no other choice. If they fight, there will be casualties, so it's up to him. The Marquis, without flinching, asked about the conditions, and Cain, smiling, said that they are great. First is the safety of the slaves he brought here. If it was too expensive, they could just set them free. The guy asked about the second, and Cain asked if they could wait until tomorrow. He came up with a condition, but he would have to discuss it with his men. Cain smiled and said he would give an answer tomorrow, and the guy nodded, agreeing to wait. The guy as he left said that he would then make sure the slaves were safe tomorrow at the same time. Cain nodded and apologized for the inconvenience. As they were leaving, someone called out to him, and upon seeing him, the lad flinched. But Mino immediately stood up and yelled at him not to come any closer. Kuro stopped Mino and the guy asked if he knew him. Kuro nodded, confirming his certainty. He was the cavalry captain of the former Marquis, the same one who had escaped 2 months ago. Smiling, The man said he had heard the lad fighting off the Algo Kingdom's army. The guy said that not only he was there, but also his subordinates. He couldn't have done it without them. The guy then asked Rick how long he had been a bandit. Shaking his head, Rick smirked and said that he ran away from the Marquis because he realized that no aristocrat could protect the country. Kuro had noticed that himself, hadn't he? This country isn't what it used to be. They want to rebuild it. The boy smirked to himself and wondered if that was why he had decided to join the bandits. Awkwardly scratching his head, the guy said that for now, yes, they were just a small gang, but with the guy's help they could make great strides. But he understands, he's the Marquis of Alakis now, but he needs to think about it. Nino asked Kuro if he would take him up on his offer, and the guy smiled and said of course not. He thinks their idea has failed. Looking at Layla, he asked her what she thought, to which she replied that she would rather believe the story about his past world. An awkward silence ensued, and the boy thought to himself that she would never believe him. The next morning the lad returned to the tower. The vanguard consisted of heavy infantry led by Mino-san and Lizard, and the archers were in the rear guard. Tilia and her subordinates covered them from behind in case the bandits tried to break through. He went to the tower alone. Kane greeted him at the gate and said he was waiting for him. Then Kane said that he was ready to take full responsibility. He would willingly give his head and in return he would ease the punishment of his subordinates. When the boy heard this, he realized what he was counting on. Looking at the horse's back, the lad asked why he had brought the cavalry with him. Kane told him not to worry, because they were there in case he broke his promise. The guy saw Rick, which meant they were united deserters. It seemed like they were going to run. Rick pulled out an arrow, and immediately Kuro lunged at Kane. Thanks to that, he managed to dodge the arrow and dodge Kane. Kane himself was stunned, but Rick shouted for them to rush forward. The riders galloped towards the boy, yelling for them to get out of the way, and Kuro, grabbing his sword, bounced aside. Layla, who saw everything from the side, immediately climbed down from the tree and wanted to rush out of the way, but Mino stopped her. Layla said Kuro had fallen into the bushes with the enemy leader, but Mino told her to calm down because the general was probably okay. Layla wanted to say something, but Mino yelled at her, and she pressed her lips together and said she understood. Mino didn't understand why she had that look on her face, but there was no time to think about it now. He immediately shouted that they had to hold them back and Mino asked Layla to help. Layla immediately cast a flame dance spell. Despite the bright flames and deafening sounds, this spell is not dangerous, but it's enough to scare them. The horses, seeing the fire, roared and jumped up, and at the same time, the shield bearers of Kuro's army rushed to attack. The horses fell, and with them the riders. Mino and Lizard jumped out of the army and used a lightning wind that sent many riders to their deaths. The riders panicked and said that they didn't know half humans could use magic, they had to retreat. An arrow hit his chest and the man fell to his death. Standing in the tree, the twins smiled and said they knew their enemies wanted to escape. The other rider was shot from different directions and didn't even have time to react. As they left, the twins asked what those bows were called. Mechanical, right. Such power. They fit perfectly in my hand. I think they were made so light for the elves. You could feel Kuro-san's love in everything. At the same time, Kuro was carrying Kine. He asked the man if he was alright, to which he nodded and said he only hurt his leg a little. He then said he was sorry it had to end like that. When they came out, they saw Layla and the guy smiled. He then asked her to report the situation, and she nodded and said that they had dealt with the unfortunate riders who were trying to escape. The guy then asked about the others, and Layla reported that they were captured, even Rick. Everyone whispered, and when Kane and Kuro approached him, Rick immediately shouted that he was throwing Kuro a duel, challenging Kuro to a one-on-one, smirking. He said that if he won, he would be released and those were fair terms. Turning to the Lizard, the guy said he was leaving Kine's hand to him. He then released Rick and said that before they started fighting, he wanted to ask something. Did their gang really have a lofty goal? Smirking, Rick said that of course not. He realized that the aristocrats don't care about the common people. He didn't want to die by those assholes. The guy was a little disappointed, even though he knew they weren't going to rebuild the country. He then asked about where he wanted to go with all that money. Rick then said that somewhere overseas where he could live happily ever after, anyone else would do the same. With those words, Rick rushed towards him and the guy raised his hand, ordering the archers to attack. In an instant, Rick was struck by arrows and fell to the ground. Trembling, Rick asked why. How could he do that? What was the difference between him and Rick himself? Opening his eyes, Kuro said he didn't run away and that was the main difference. Kane, seeing that it was already over, said what speed it was. It was over quickly. He then walked up to Kuro and leaned over and said he was ready to take responsibility for everything that had happened. He asked only for the lives of his people. They had suffered enough, left without homes and families. The boy asked him why he became a bandit, and Cain said for the most obvious reasons. When his family couldn't pay taxes because of a bad harvest, his parents went to the master to ask for a tax cut. But the Lord killed them before they could speak. Then the boy asked about Markalakis being the Lord, to which Cain shook his head. He escaped from their village with his sister, but she died on the way. He was then picked up by a group of mercenaries and grew up with people whose past was similar to his own. After that, he started his own group in one of the free cities. Well, that was proof that he had once had an honest job. The guy looked at him and asked why he kidnapped slaves then. The guy said there was a little girl. He tried to ignore her, but the slave trader beat her horribly. She reminded Cain of his sister. His men said nothing. Despite what he did, he was right, and so he is willing to give his life for them. He begs his forgiveness and is willing to die for his men. Pulling out his sword, the guy told Cain Dono. No, Cain just raised his head. Then the guy said if he wants to die so badly he can join him. He needs people who also know how to ride horses since he had experienced life in the slums. So Kuro would need his guidance. Gritting his teeth, Cain said that he was a worthless bandit, to which Kuro said that he was now Marquis' subordinate since he had taken up the sword. Cain looked at the crest on the sword and shuddered, and the guy said it was an imperial crest. Tilia, coming up behind him, unhappily said that a normal aristocrat wouldn't throw imperial weapons left and right. Kuro, smiling, simply looked at Cain and said that he needed an answer right now. He looked the guy in the eye and bowed his head, swearing allegiance with sword in hand. From that moment on, he had a new subordinate. Mercenary Cain, a little was certainly clumsy, but truly kind. At night in the mansion, he and Sheila had a drink together. Sheila was glad that the expensive wine was hitting her head in a very different way. Then, seeing that Kuro wasn't drinking, she asked why. Kuro said he knew Alyssa had bought this wine especially for them, but he wasn't in the mood. Sheila, getting serious, asked him what was bothering him. He defeated the bandits and got a new subordinate, something to be proud of. The boy understood. She was completely right, but he had an uneasy feeling. Smiling, Sheila said that there are times when they don't know how they feel. The surprised guy asked if she had felt something like this before. Sheila nodded, smiling sadly, and then sipped her wine. Now the guy wondered if it was related to her last husband. The girl said she thought he was worried about the fight with a former coworker. He knew it was inevitable. But do you still regret what happened? The guy asked if he really did, to which the girl nodded, saying she was sure. Well, Kuro didn't regret killing Rick and his comrades, but that doesn't change the fact that he killed people. The spiritual values of this world are not like the values in modern Japan. Standing up, Sheila asked if she could cheer him up. Smirking, the guy asked about getting drunk or what. The girl shook her head and said she just thought she should be there for him when he was so upset. Isn't that what men need? The guy said she was definitely drunk, and the girl didn't deny it this time. But she moved closer, put her hands on his chest and said with a cold smile that evenings like this weren't so bad, were they? The guy blushed and sighed, and then they were drunk with the passion of love. Dawn began for Kuro with the sensation of something soft touching his forehead. When he woke up, he saw Sheila, who smiled and asked if she had woken Kuro-san. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Then turning around, he said that he was busy right now, so he asked to come back later. But unfortunately, the knocking got even louder. Smiling, the guy thought about how he seemed to have guessed who it was. He then asked where his pants were, and Sheila said they must be on the floor. Well, he didn't see them, so he figured nothing would happen if he just hid behind the door. When he got to the door and opened it, Tilia immediately rushed inside and yelled that she was the one who knocked and then froze. The guy smiled awkwardly and wished her a good morning. And then she saw him and was about to shriek, but he grabbed her sharply and turned her against the wall, clamping her mouth shut. She said something, but the guy with the scowl on his face told her to behave, and nothing bad would happen. Even though he said that, if anyone saw them, it would be the end. He could be accused of trying to kill the princess. The girl, trembling, said that he really decided to take advantage of her carelessness and attack her. She clenched her teeth at that. The guy, not understanding, asked what she was talking about. The girl also said that he had deliberately set her up to attack her, to which the guy told her not to talk nonsense. Suddenly, Sheila appeared from behind, scratching her head awkwardly, and asked what they were even doing. Turning around, Tilia frowned and asked what she was doing here, to which Sheila said she should ask Kuro-san about it, and she would go take a bath and get back to work. So when she left, Tilia asked what it was all about. Didn't he know she was coming? The guy sighed and said she had misunderstood. The workshop was filled with the sounds of metal as always. Inside, Goldie was handing Kuro a prototype of a new armor today. Goldie, smiling, said that they had used a special hot forging method that made the iron stronger and more malleable. Of course, this also applies to swords. Even making bows could avoid problems some had occurred before. But this armor pierced through mechanical bows. Smiling, the guy said that was good, because the piercing power of such bows was much higher. In any case, this armor was clearly better than the previous ones, so Kuro told them to make them now, and Goldie easily agreed. After that, he said that he would also like to evaluate the paper. Are there already copies of it? Goldie said that they had just prepared 50 pages in advance. The guy nodded and said that he would take 10 of them then. When the sheets were brought to him, he examined them and said that Goldie had probably overdone it. Although Kuro trusted him to produce both armor and paper, it would be illogical for him to die from overwork. The guy didn't want a black enterprise to appear on his lands. Smiling, Goldie said that Mr. Kuro was too worried. Recycling wouldn't be able to kill him. Well, anyway, the guy asked him to rest, thinking there was nothing funny about it. They just finished beating a gang of robbers, and I'd like to get some rest. But there's still so much to do. Deal with prostitution and the slave trade, sell paper, and deal with poverty and the needy. As he was walking, he suddenly saw Kane and said, smiling, that he seemed to feel fine. The surprised guy turned around and looked at Kuro-san. Smiling, the guy said not to worry so much, he could just call him Kuro-san. But Kane said that wasn't right. If he didn't treat him with proper respect, his subordinates might misunderstand. Thinking about it, the guy nodded, because before this, Kane was the leader of a gang of robbers. But when he speaks so politely, he can pass for a young man of noble origin. Kane then asked him why Kuro-sen decided to visit this hospital, and the guy replied that he just came to check on them. Kane, bowing his head, said that he was certainly grateful for the kindness, but his subordinates still haven't come to terms with what happened. Therefore, he was asking for a little more time. But there was nothing to do, so Kuro didn't mind. That's basically what he thought. If he delayed then, it would be too late. Afterward, the guy asked him how his wounds were, and Kane said he wasn't seriously injured, so he'd start work the next day. After all, they're military, so they should earn their trust with real actions as soon as possible. Despite what Kane said, Kuro didn't want to overwhelm them. But when you think about people's opinions, you probably can't think of a faster way. The guy looked at Kane and said currently, he was negotiating with a merchant who had suffered losses. The negotiations were not yet finished, but as expected, finding a job wouldn't be easy. Kane, flinching, bowed and apologized for saying something not willful. Smiling, the guy told him not to sweat so much, but they should definitely apologize to whoever they were negotiating with right now. Kane, of course, agreed. After that, Kuro went to the Peaks Trade Association and arranged to sell paper. The Kephius Empire sells parchment for 3 coppers per sheet, so he wanted to get Nicholas' opinion on whether it would be wise to sell paper at 1 coppers per sheet to break into the market. He tried to find out from him at what price to sell paper in bulk to avoid a shortage. Of course, he didn't answer. Smiling, Nicholas said that the first thing he would like to do was to buy all the paper from them at the price of 5 copper coins, and then, when they produced a new batch, to negotiate again. But maybe that wouldn't be so bad. The guy first asked what it meant that Nicholas wanted to test the product in action, and then asked if there were any other conditions, to which Nicholas asked for a minute to think about it. He then smiled and asked Mr. Kuro how he would like to entrust the implementation of the paper to the Peaks Trade Association. Well, Kuro didn't mind, so they made an agreement and sealed the agreement with a handshake. After that, Kuro went to look around the city. There is a market in the square, but as expected, the range of goods is small. Only large trade associations like Peaks can afford a wide assortment. Suddenly, there was a cheerful voice announcing that they had found Kuro-san. Turning around, the guy saw the twins, both smiling, asked who was who, he had to guess. Thinking about it, the guy said, it's really a mystery all at once. They are twins, but you can tell who is who by their hair. Kuro, deciding that there was no mistaking it, asked them to come over and gently stroke their ears and, looking at their reactions, said that Erida was on the right and Danny on the left. The surprised girls asked him how he realized that, to which the guy explained that Danny had tears when he stroked her ear. The surprised girl said it was an epiphany. Kuro-san sees right through them. After that, they went for a walk and Kuro asked them what they were doing here. It seems that the Empire gave them the day off today for participating in apprehending robbers. Smiling, Danny said that they just wanted to let her know that Layla had class at the barracks today. And Erida continued by saying that he could suddenly call her over to him and knock her down. Smirking, the guy said he wasn't some animal. You can't do that. Gemini said that was an unexpected reaction. Isn't she his lover? Smiling, the guy said he loves Layla because he wants to cherish her. The twins looked at each other and then abruptly grabbed the guy's hands from both sides and asked if he wanted to have fun with them then. The guy said he wasn't having fun, but doing an inspection, to which the demon lord said it didn't matter. After that they went for a walk, enjoying food, drinks and more. Hiro was going to refuse if they asked for something expensive, but that didn't happen. The twins only chose the cheap stuff, but there was so much shopping that this walk cost him a tidy sum. The guy stopped behind a counter with something that looked like dried daikon strips and looked at them with interest. Seemingly noticing his interest, the vendor smiled and said it was dried bit. The boy asked that bit is such a root vegetable, right? And the woman nodded. She then said that bit is the heritage of the goddess of fertility given to them. Her father had been breeding this variety for many years. The fertility goddess is one of the 6 gods, though no shrines should be here. Seeing that the twins were interested, the guy said that it seemed like this was the first time they were seeing Madam Shin. He then explained that Mrs. Shin, who worships the fertility goddess, is a priestess, but she is basically just a good person who distributes food. The twins then said that indeed, she delivers humanitarian aid, so that means she is Shin. But why did they suddenly decide to open a kiosk? The woman became sad. It was somehow embarrassing for the imperial family to talk about it. But the funds coming from the shrine were no longer enough, so she picked up the plant and asked what he would say. After all, this piece was quite sweet and tasty. Grinning, Erida said, well, no, it's cattle feed, and Danny said she didn't think it was worth selling to humans. But unlike them, Kuro easily took it and tasted it, which made them both shudder in fear and shout that it wasn't that people shouldn't eat it. When Shin heard her boyfriend's name, a realization came to her, and in shock she immediately leaned over and immediately apologized, shouting that she didn't know what to say to the Lord. Smiling awkwardly, the guy said that she shouldn't worry about it so much. The elves nodded and said it was true, the creepy rumors were all fiction. The surprised lad asked what those rumors were, and the twins explained that the rumors said that the Lord was incredibly handsome, perfectly proficient in both sword and magic. He is 10 times stronger than any warrior, and his right eye is the eye of a god, able to look into the deepest corners of the soul. He is very charming and easily wins people's hearts, but he has one flaw. He is too fond of carnal pleasures. Feeling depressed, the guy just didn't say anything. The surprised priestess asked what it meant. The rumors about him dragging young maidens to his bed every night were also fiction. The boy shuddered, and Erida said that part of the rumor was absolutely true. Who knows how many people were already caught in his net. The guy, smiling awkwardly, told them to stop, and then said he'd like to buy one bunch of bits anyway. They took 1 copper coin from him. When they left, the twins asked him why they had to buy that bit, and the guy smiled and said it was for one good thing. After all, the 2 of them can use cooling magic, can't they? The girls nodded, but looked at him questioningly. Danny said that she thought they were going back to the Marquis mansion, and Danny said that it looked like he was going to make something out of the boiled bit. Sheila, putting the ingredients on the table, said that she had made milk and eggs, just like Kuro had asked. She then asked him to finally tell her what he wanted to cook. The guy smiled and asked why he couldn't make real sugar. Hearing this, they got excited and said that it was indeed the most legendary dish. The guy, upon hearing this, said he wasn't sure about the legend. The guy thought that although there was nothing to be surprised about, if he remembered correctly, 1 kilogram of sugar costs 1 gold coin. The monthly salary of a common soldier is only 1 gold coin, so the price is really high. Sheila suspiciously asked if it was really possible to make sugar from a bit, to which the guy smiled and nodded. Sugar beet, or as it is also called bit, is the source of sugar. It is the same ingredient for sugar as sugar cane. This variety is probably the same and will do just fine. The softened beets need to be taken out of the water and then boiled to give them juice. Kuro saw this method in the movie Let's Make Sugar from Beets Together when he was still in middle school. After looking at the contents of the cauldron, the guy said that it was already pretty soggy. A while later, a burning smell started to appear, and the twins yelled that it was on fire. The sugar is burning. The boy looked doubtful and said there was only 1 step left. That's when Sheila came over and asked how about the water bath. This pot is too big, so it's better to put it in a salad bowl. Now they heat them up by putting it in a pot of boiling water, and that's how they taste it. Sheila said that no doubt it was sugar, which means they were successful. The twins' eyes glistened and they tasted it, saying with blissful faces that it was indeed legendary sugar. When the guy took the pot, they immediately whined, saying that the guy shouldn't take it all for himself, because they also wanted to taste this happiness. Smiling, the guy asked if they wanted to try something even more delicious. After that, he started cooking. In a clean bowl, he mixed sugar, milk, and yolks, then whisked it lightly, handing the bowl to the girls. The guy asked them to cool it down a bit, and they nodded and used the ice dance. Now pour the mixture into the chilled bowl and whisk until it hardens. And now it's ready. When the girls tasted this stuff, they were over the moon. That's how delicious it was. Sheila asked with interest what this dish was, while the elves were happily eating. The guy said it was called ice cream, and that surprised the girls. They asked about something he himself would not be convinced of, and the guy said it wasn't for him. And when they wanted to talk about something, Tilia came in furious. She was clearly furious and said she was looking for him. Did he really think he could just run away after what he had done? The guy shuddered and asked her to calm down, then handed her a cup of ice cream, saying it was as an apology for Layla, of course, too. Of course, the princess didn't want to cool down so quickly and said that he really wanted to buy her with it. Layla took the ice cream and tasted it and commented that it was cold, sweet, and very tasty. The twins immediately cheerfully said that if the princess wasn't around, they could eat her portion. Tilia was interested, took the bowl, said she didn't say she wouldn't, and then tasted the delicacy. She was also fascinated, but when she saw the boys smile, she was a little annoyed again. Then she asked what it was and how it was even made. The guy explained that it was called ice cream, and to make it you had to mix sugar, milk, and eggs, then cool it quickly. The girl, blissfully eating the ice cream, said it was sugar, that's where the sweetness came from. But it came out good anyway. Smiling, Sheila said who would have thought that pieces of cheap batter could make such a wonderful dish. Of course, this made the girl angry, and, enraged, she asked Kuro about feeding him something like that. The guy recoiled fearfully and said that but it was delicious. With an annoyed look at the cup, the girl handed it over and yelled that she wasn't going to eat cattle feed. Anyway, Kuro should go to his room now. Giggling, Arita said that the princess was very brave. Embarrassed, Tilia shouted that she only wanted to talk to him about future plans. Hearing this, the twins giggled and said how many children they will have. That's the limit. And, furious and all red, Tilia slapped the table and yelled that she would throw them all in jail for insulting the princess. The twins panicked and asked Kuro-san to speak up for them. The girl was still angry, and as they walked towards the office, she irritably asked what was wrong with those twins. Some kindergarten. Turning to Kuro, she said that by the way, it concerned him too. What was it? First he sprayed her with that thing and then he ran away, shivering. The girl grabbed her hair and said she had inherited it from her mother, and how could he do that? The guy raised his hands in a sign of reconciliation and said he was sorry. But did she really call him out just for that? The girl was annoyed by his behavior and, clucking, said she wasn't. And then, taking a deep breath and calming down, the girl asked him who he really was. The guy flinched, and then, quickly pulling himself together, asked her what she meant. Then the demon lord began to list his ideas. Mechanical onions, paper, and now sugar. Where did he get such knowledge from? The guy froze and the girl frowned, because every time she tried to talk to him, she felt some kind of discomfort. Like he's not from here, but from another world. As if he shouldn't be here at all and is some unexplained anomaly. Walking over, the girl pulled out a dagger and held it to Kuro's throat, asking about who he really was. Smirking, the guy said it was pretty cruel, but he thought they were friends. Tilia said she thought so too, but unfortunately she has certain obligations. He must tell the truth or he would die. Looking at her determined look, the boy realized that she seemed to be serious. It seemed to him that if he told the truth, she still wouldn't believe him and would finish him off. Still, he made up his mind and told her that he came from another world. Tilia frowned, and the dagger touched her neck and lightly cut the skin until it bled. And then she still put it away, saying she understood. That was such a relief to Kuro that he breathed a sigh of relief. Tilia then asked if he had told anyone, and the guy, smiling, said he was one of his subordinates. But she didn't believe him. Then he asked Tilia doubtfully if she believed him, to which she said that it was said that the first emperor of Cepheus was from another world. With his vast knowledge, he was able to unite neighboring countries and build an empire. The girl asked if he remembered the name Mori Ranmar. The guy nodded, so the name Emperor Ranmar V came from Ranmar's altered accent. He then asked what did that have to do with the fact that she was going to kill him. Sighing, the girl said that since he was also a black-haired alien from another world, there would be a lot of trouble if there was a group of people who claimed that the first emperor had returned. In addition, there was also the possibility that he would decide to destroy the country by resorting to the knowledge of the other world. The boy smiled and said that he didn't have that much knowledge. The girl nodded, saying that was probably true for him, but it was different for this world. The girl admitted that she was torn between the choice of killing him or letting him live. Smiling awkwardly, the guy said that if she put herself in his shoes, she would definitely choose to stay alive. The girl nodded and said that was reasonable, and she would let him live for a while longer. But suddenly the girl shouted furiously that he, as a half-elf or a cook, was not allowed to drag girls into his room. This was a serious blow to freedom, and the guy screamed that this couldn't be. The girl yelled at him not to whine. She returns to the royal capital next week. At least until then, he must pretend to be a model lord. The boy sighed, thinking about the whole week, putting a hand to his forehead. The girl had said that even her servants didn't see him as an aristocrat. At this rate, there would be a lot of bad rumors about him by the time she got back to the capital. The guy said he didn't care, to which the girl said that it cast a shadow on her. So until she leaves, he should suppress his animal needs. The guy sighed and said he wasn't sure if he could. But then a dagger was thrown at him, which flew a millimeter from his neck and embedded itself into the ground. And the guy gulped, turning pale. Looking at him fiercely, the princess said he could or would die. Straining a smile, the guy with cold sweat running down his face said that he understood. A week had passed and now he was seeing her off. The guy said he would miss her, to which the girl told him to bother making a then less pleased face. Smiling, the guy cheerfully said that he thought he would really miss her, but still this. Crinkling her face, the girl said he was an animal, with a light in her eyes like an innocent child. The guy asked if she really thought that, to which the girl asked in disgust why his eyes sparkled like that and what was going on in his head. Sighing, the girl said that he was definitely not human. Couldn't he be a little sentimental so as not to ruin the moment? The guy smiled awkwardly and said that even if it was 2 weeks away from the imperial capital, he could still come. Wasn't that the kind of relationship he and her had? The girl flared up when they talked about their relationship. And then the guy explained that a lot of things happened, but they were friends. The girl coughed dryly and nodded, saying that was for sure. They are friends. That's when the guy remembered the army replenishment and told her that he hadn't heard back from the military department. Then the girl said she would personally send a request to the Empire. Kuro thanked her and she told Sit that she was leaving Kuro to him. The old man bowed and said he wouldn't let her down. And then the guy held out his hand to his girlfriend and said it was time to say goodbye. The girl smiled, shook his hand and told him to take care. The carriage left, followed by a reinforced convoy of heavily armed soldiers. At night, after checking Layla's knowledge, he said that she had made many mistakes today due to inattention, for which she apologized. He had regular lessons with Layla, and she always had a near top score in arithmetic. Then the guy said that if she was tired, maybe they would finish early. The girl nodded. They study after formation training, and on weekends she studies on her own, so it can't be helped if she's tired. He felt ashamed himself for being so excited about lifting the ban. If she had wanted him to, he would have honored her wishes, but it looked like he'd have to be patient today. Year 430 Imperial Calendar, mid-July, the workers were hard at work at the construction site, with Kuro keeping an eye on everything. This was the future paper mill that was to be completed in a couple months. Looking at it, Kuro hoped that the Empire would be able to set up production. It was estimated that the workshop should pay for itself in about 1.5 years of operation. But there was a chance that the idea would fail, and the thought made Kuro uneasy. Goldie said the concept is amazing. Mr. Kuro, as always, is full of terrific ideas. With the idea of dividing production into sectors, workers won't have to memorize too many steps. This should make production much easier. There are still many unknowns in this endeavor, but they will do their best. First cooking, then cleaning, then binning, then molding, pressing, and finally drying. Suddenly there was an irritated shout from a girl who yelled asking him to bring her some papers. Turning around, the guy saw Elena and walked over to her. She angrily yelled at the worker, stating that he was useless. The guy called out to him, and she irritably asked what he needed, and Kuro told her to watch her words. She should be more polite, to which Elena waved her hand, saying that somehow she should start by saying that she thought they hadn't prepared spare paper. The guy asked Goldie to find them some paper, and the old man nodded. And then Kuro told Elena to stop being so rude. The annoyed girl screamed, asking what he said. Was he really going to defend the gnome? Kuro had had enough of this and pulled Elena towards him by her collar. Startled, the girl immediately lost her pride and said pitifully that she was sorry and it wouldn't happen again. So she asked her not to do it. The guy sternly asked her what her job was, and she replied that it was financial accounting and office work and registering marriages and taking applications from slave traders. He then asked her that preparing the paper was also her responsibility, wasn't it? The girl nodded, shivering, and the guy asked her, which of course she realized she was treating everyone politely. She nodded again, and then Kuro let her go, and she immediately collapsed with tears in her eyes. Goldie brought the paper and the guy handed it to the girl. Elena thanked him and the guy smiled. After that, she left and Goldie asked Kuro what he was going to do after that. The guy said he would look around the city. In the slums, the girl was handing out food to the unemployed. One of them thanked her and the girl, smiling, said there was no need for gratitude. She was simply following the teachings of the goddess of fertility. The next one was, on the contrary, ungrateful. The man snapped and yelled at eating those damn vegetables again. At least you could add meat once in a while. The girl became sad at this statement, but then she noticed a familiar face. Kuro greeted her, and the demon lord looked at him in surprise. A while later, the guy asked if she was always here handing out food, to which she nodded. Then the guy said that today she seemed to be the only one here doing good deeds, putting the pot on the table and nodded. Then she asked if he had anything to do with her, to which the guy smiled and said that he would like to talk about something. At the same time, two energetic elves burst into the conversation, greeting everyone. The girls shouted that they had finally found her, and could she please sell them the bit. Sheena said this doubtfully, but they said it was only good for cattle feed, to which the girl, with a twinkle in her eyes, shouted that she could forget about it. She must sell as much as she could. Walking up to them, the guy said who were their little brigands. The girls turned around and stunned. Who had done this to him? What insolence. The guy, feeling like an idiot, said they had just pushed him themselves. Panicked, the elves turned to Sheena and shouted for her to heal him with her priestess power as soon as possible. They will even make a donation. These two always treat him in a very familial manner, but even they seemed to realize what could happen if the Lord was injured. Sheena was startled by this and trembled. Sighing, Cairo said that there was no need to worry so much over a simple scratch. At the same time, Layla walked over to him and asked him to sit down, which the guy did. The girl then kissed him on the forehead, and then licked the bruise. The guy, embarrassed, asked if the elf's saliva had any healing effect, to which she replied that she had no idea. She then kissed him again and told him that everything was fine now, and the guy thanked her. The twins were gloomy, saying that the two had gotten so carried away that they had completely forgotten about them. This is when Sheena came to her senses and asked what she should do, and the twins, sighing, simply asked her to sell them a lot of bits. Until she sells, they won't leave. The guy said irritably that then they'd be in the way of construction. He actually bought the whole bit. The nun rejoiced, but the elves were outraged, shouting that it was arbitrary and what right did he have to do that. Layla, looking at them sternly, said that Cairo is the lord of these lands. He has rights to everything, as long as they are in his territory. He can do whatever he wants. Sheena, folding her arms, thanked them. She said she would pray that the goddess of fertility would bless all their endeavors. The boyfriend then told Sheena that he would like to discuss something with her, to which she of course agreed and said she would be quick now. At this, the twins huddled up to him and sweetly asked him to share a piece with them, then they could provide better service. But their enthusiasm quickly cooled under Layla's annoyed look. In a panic, the sisters gave up, declaring that they just wanted to eat ice cream again. They weren't going to seduce him. The guy pointed at Shenny and asked what was wrong, then offered to help. Danny said that there seemed to be some new announcement, but they couldn't read it. Arita said there was no point in having a bulletin board if most people couldn't read. Layla then said that it was an official announcement that prostitution and the slave trade would become legal starting next month. Danny, not understanding the meaning of the announcement, asked what was wrong. Danny said that there seemed to be a new announcement, but they couldn't read it. The girl then she said that Kuro would only allow brothels where the employees undergo regular medical examinations to operate. That way, people could use their services without any fear. The same goes for the slave trade. After all, now because of the violence of slave traders, a slave can die soon after purchase. Layla said that, in other words, she was protecting the interests of the buyers. Smiling, Elaine said that she was smart, but unfortunately not smart enough. She then nodded to the guy, and he said, scratching the back of his head awkwardly, that actually the reason lay on the surface. He wanted to get rid of the forced prostitution and brutality from the slave traders, but it would be difficult to do so if they continued to hide. The guy then thanked Elaine for supporting the idea, to which she smiled and said that there was no need for thanks, since they were the first to get permission. But next time he should give advance notice. It wasn't easy to organize. The guy nodded and the girl chuckled and said that it was a thing of the past. She should get going and he could come by sometime and she would be waiting. Soon at the castle, Sheena and Kuro sat down at a table and Sheila asked what Kuro would like to talk to her about. The boy said there were several topics, but first she should tell her how things were going with agriculture in the Marquis of Alaki's territory. The girl nodded and said that these lands use a 3-field system. In the 3 fields, the land is divided into 3 parts. The first year spring crops are planted, the second year winter crops are planted, and in the third year the field is allowed to rest for the land to recover and accumulate moisture. Cattle are grazed there, and this also contributes to recovery. Guy asked if they apply fertilizer and use an irrigation canal. Then we could skip this recreation of the field. The girl tilted her head and Kuro explained that he had heard that it was good to add ash to the soil as well as manure. Unfortunately, that is all he knew. Sheila said that she was aware of that, but they had no way to get such a large amount of fertilizer. Then the guy asked that it wouldn't be possible to collect it from the city and the countryside, to which the girl replied that it was quite difficult to organize transportation, and besides they didn't have enough cattle to produce enough manure. After thinking for a while, the guy said that means we should start by increasing the number of cattle. Then Sheila asked what about the irrigation canals after all? There is no water source in the neighborhood. The guy nodded and said that was true, there were no rivers or lakes. It is very expensive to increase livestock or build wells for farming. It's not like modern Japan here. There's nothing you can do about it. It won't be easy to figure things out alone. Suddenly Sheila made up her mind and looked at Mr. Kuro and said that her now deceased father had said that growing clover helped the soil regenerate quickly and store moisture. No one believed it, but when she started tilling the land and herding cattle on her own, she realized it worked. Smiling, the boy said they would then grow clover in the fallow field. The girl looked at him in surprise, and seeing that look, the guy scratched the back of his head awkwardly and said that of course it would be problematic to do it so suddenly. To begin with, 10% of the area would be sown. If that succeeds, they will gradually increase the area, and then it will be easier for people to accept it. When that happens, would he be able to trust Sheena to lead the whole thing? The girl froze, and then a realization came to her, and as she stood up, she bowed sharply, saying that she would gladly accept it. The boy nodded and said he was counting on her. Furthermore, Kuro himself is thinking about reopening the workhouse. Unlike past experiences, it will now be an institution that provides food, shelter, and helps people find jobs until they become self-sufficient. In this world, conditions in workhouses are terrible. People are forced to work without rest, getting minimal sleep and food. So for those in the workhouses, freedom remains a distant dream. The guy then said that this is why he wanted Sheena to become the director of the new workhouse. Hearing this, the girl froze, but the guy, not noticing this, continued, saying that in addition, he had learned that sugar could be obtained from the variety of bit that her father had bred, so he would like to organize production. The girl stood up, which startled Kuro. He even thought that perhaps he had put too much on her mind. The girl, clenching her fists, said she couldn't accept it. She shouted that her father was farming so that these people wouldn't starve and they would have a good harvest. But despite his best efforts, the bit is still called cattle fodder. The same thing happened with clover. No one believed it. He and his father tried their best, but no one accepted. The boy froze at her shout, and Layla said that she didn't think Kuro should worry about it. She then added that Kuro was actually a very kind person, but those who decided to go against him would regret it bitterly. The girl looked down at her hands, trembling that today, when he was injured, she couldn't use healing because she couldn't do it. She had worked hard for the good of others, handing out food, but nothing had worked. All the while, he was taking advantage of his position as if he was making a mockery of her conditions. Becoming furious, Layla screamed that Kuro was not that kind of person at all. Suddenly, the girl realized what she had said and clutched her mouth in fear, and started babbling a question in panic about what she had done. Then she turned and ran to the window, and when Kuro saw this, Kuro ordered Layla to stop her. Layla blocked Sheena's path with lightning speed. Kuro stood up and called out to her and then said that it must be very difficult to live in a society that does not recognize you. As a priestess, it's not easy for her, but she can't give it up. The guy looked at her and said he didn't know what she was going through and the only thing he could do was guess, so he would try to feel it himself. The guy said that instead of Sheena, he'd seed the field with clover himself, and in return he'd promote the idea of growing Baidia. Would she be able to manage the technical part of the cultivation process and take over as director of the workhouse? The girl fell down and said that, then, if that happened, then all their work would be different. The next day, due to the opening of the workhouse, it was decided to move Shen's belongings. There were 3 people and a driver in the carriage. Kane looked at Kuro-san and asked that perhaps something had happened between them, to which the guy sighed and said it was a long story. At that, Shen's gaze drilled her. The guy then said that, come to think of it, he probably accidentally hurt her feelings while trying to do a good deed. Kane looked at him and said something like, the noble robber gave money to the poor and was beheaded by it. The guy said it wasn't that much, she was just being overly sentimental or something. Kane then said that the guy trying to do a good deed didn't like the approach he took, something like that. At this time, Sheena said that the temple should be coming up soon, and next to a huge rock they saw a building. Looking at it, the guy said that, but he had envisioned it a little differently. When he heard the word temple, he imagined something in the style of the Parthenon. The girl said irritably that, well, she was apologizing for it being so small. The guy flinched, and Cain went pale. Looking up, the guy thought he knew nothing about the local religion, but it seemed that this big rock had something to do with the shrine. And it was probably the bit. Unlike the building, you could see that the field was meticulously manicured. He begins to realize what Sheena was talking about. Soon they entered the shrine, which was completely empty. The girl said that there was no one here, and the surprised guy said that it turns out she does everything alone, and cooks food for the poor too, coming to a rage. The girl screamed, asking about it, and what about it? Nothing can be done about it because there are not enough funds. The boy looked questioningly at Cain, and the latter explained that basically temples don't do anything if there's no benefit to them. Turning around, Shin angrily shouted that it wasn't true, she was with her father. But Cain's angry look made her shiver and silence her with fear. Turning around, she apologized for her rudeness, and Cain bowed as well and said he shouldn't have expressed himself so harshly. Then the girl said she would pack her things and they should help with the back room. Kuro asked him if he could stop being too polite, to which he awkwardly scratched the back of his head and said that they were definitely the only ones here. He then said that he thought it would be better to use polite language, to which Kuro said that was fine. He was making it too difficult. Even in the presence of others he could talk to him normally. On that point, Cain thought he would play this performance a little longer until Kuro started getting along better with everyone. In Sheena's case, he thought it would be better to try to act caring, like being more sympathetic when they were alone. The guy nodded, saying we should try that. First we need to stop saying everything that comes into our heads. Cain said he would do the heavy stuff and Kuro could gather all the little things. The guy thanked him and then asked if what Cain said about the temples was true. Cain nodded, saying that the temples are willing to do a lot if donations are made. But those temples only appoint ideological low-ranking priests like Sheena who are not useful, because then the Empire doesn't have to think about building relationships with the locals from scratch. It turns out that Sheena's father continued to try his best for the benefit of the locals despite this attitude. Looking at Cain, the guy said that he didn't seem to like the temples. Taking the bags, he said it's because he's a robber. Kuro then said that was in the past. Cain said his sister died while they were wandering around after their parents died. It was possible that they tried to ask for help from the temple, but the Empire refused. Cain told him that they should quickly load up the rest of the supplies and return to the city. A while later, Shin came in with a bag, saying that it was the last bag and all the things were packed. She then looked worriedly at the field and asked what would happen to the bat, to which Cain said that he and his staff would take care of the field. The girl looked at him in surprise and Cain, smiling, said that although he was a cavalryman now, he and his subordinates used to be simple peasants. From a very young age, they helped in the fields. Smiling, Sheena said that he had to endure many hardships, to which Cain smiled and said that it was impossible to count how many there were. Sheila approached the cart and asked if Kuro was going to come inside. The boy looked around in surprise, for he had not even noticed that they had arrived. The girl, seeing him dejected, asked if something was wrong, to which the guy said yes, how should I put it? He kept Shin busy with agricultural reforms and running the workhouse, but he couldn't do much himself. After this incident, Shin started to look at Cain with such a glowing look. The mere fact that a simple peasant could become a cavalryman was already an exceptional case for the Empire. The guy thought she respected him, or rather admired him, but she looked at him like a cockroach. He hated it when girls hated him. Then Sheila explained that it was called gratuitous hostility, but the instigator was actually Kuro. But he thought so. It was also said that his kindness to Layla would also become poison to her. Then Sheila said that it had nothing to do with his kindness at all. People who have difficulties for a long time become prickly, and then they wonder why he didn't come to save her sooner. And there's nothing you can do about it. But Sheila did love his kindness. The boy looked at her affectionately, and the girl smiled and said that, as he had asked, they should clean the workhouse building. Wouldn't he like to see how things were going? Getting off the wagon, the boy asked where Sheena was, and the girl said that she and Cain had gone to the second floor. Truth be told, Kuro wanted to go back to the mansion and go to bed, but he needed to talk to Sheena about his future plans. Seeing his sad face, Sheila indignantly told him not to make such a face, because she was always willing to give him advice if needed. Smirking, the guy asked if it was really just advice, and the girl blushed and turned her head, quietly whispering that yes. As they entered, Sheila called out loudly that Kuro was already here, so they should introduce themselves. The girl then turned to the guy and said that he actually had a request. Would he listen? Of course the guy would listen, but he couldn't promise anything. Pointing to the girls, Sheila asked if he would take these 4 as staff at the workhouse, to which the guy replied that sometimes not the best people end up in the workhouse. Hearing this, Sheila said that they would not be inferior to the boys in brute strength. Plus, they can all read and have been taught basic arithmetic. Not a bad acquisition, isn't it? Looking at them, Kuro thought that even if he was skeptical of the talk of strength, the fact that they had a basic education was of great value. Nodding, the guy hired them, which pleased Sheila, who said that they should be grateful to Kuro, and now it was time for them to get to work. Kuro looked at Sheila and asked if she happened to have any military experience and if she was good at command. With her hands at her sides, the girl said that of course there was no such thing, though her father had taught her some self-defense techniques. The guy chuckled that she seemed to have many hidden talents, to which the girl said that he really thought she was only capable of cooking. That's when the girl noticed Shen and said that someone had come in. She frowned. Seeing this, Kuro thought her mood hadn't changed at all. Sheila grudgingly, with her hands at her sides, asked what was wrong. What was that awful look? Sheena said it was because Kuro likes to make frivolous decisions. Sheila asked what she was talking about. He's actually their master. He may look frivolous, but just by looking at that scar, you can tell that Kuro protected them without sparing himself. Sheena shouted that she and her father were also trying their best for the good of the people. Frowning, Sheila asked what her people were talking about, and the demon lord, clenching her fists, said that they were simple peasants and poor people. My father has devoted his whole life to growing Baidia. They already know you can make sugar from it. Sheila, clutching Kuro even tighter to her chest, said she recognized that her father worked hard, but it was Kuro who made sugar out of Baidia. Usually, for the sake of the people, they bred new, more productive crops or improved the farming process itself. Her father wasn't doing it for people, but for himself. Shin gritted her teeth and, unable to find anything to say, rushed away. When Sheila saw her running away, she could only shrug her shoulders. Looking at her, Kuro awkwardly scratched the back of his head and said that he thought Sheila had overdone it a bit. There was no denying that she had been putting a lot of effort into her work all this time. Folding her arms across her chest, the girl said that if she hadn't said that, Kuro would have had a hard time with her. She meddles in the work. Then Kane came up and said that Sheila was right. The guy looked at him questioningly, and he said that Sheena is constantly complaining and contradicting higher-ups. Whether it's a pay raise or running a workhouse, Sheena doesn't have to be involved. You can find as many replacements as you want. Guy dismissed that advice and said she was capable, and they needed her. Smirking, Sheila said that seemed to be his own wish, and Kane, scratching the back of his head, said that, well, since Kuro had made up his mind, he had nothing to say. Kuro knew that Kane was right and there was no reason to choose Shen. All he could say in response was that as a lord he was trying to stick to his moral principles. The guy checked and ran and said she was fast. Soon he saw her sitting up and shivering. The girl, trembling, asked why she wanted to do something for others. Is it wrong to try for people? Smiling, Kuro said she only became a maid because she wanted to try for people, didn't she? Well, though maybe he shouldn't have said that when he doesn't know her very well. But it couldn't be helped. So, clenching her fists, the girl asked about it. But even him, didn't he fight for other people? Smiling awkwardly, the guy said that he himself thought he would fight for the sake of his subordinates. But in the end, it was still for his own sake. Desertion was a grave offense. He would have been executed anyway. And by fighting, he had a chance. And investing in industry and papermaking and agricultural reform are all profitable. Well, after all, he's doing everything for himself. Crying, Sheena asked if the fertility goddess needed such a priestess who deceives her own heart. The boy smiled softly and said he couldn't know what the gods were thinking. The girl nodded and then said she was just awful. All she did was make excuses, but she hadn't really done anything herself yet. As a result, I even pissed off the people who came to help with the cleanup. She wanted to fall through the ground. Smiling, the guy said that she must be upset with her father. But nothing could be fixed, she just needed to get over it. So if it's so hard, why doesn't she just quit her job as a priestess? The girl froze and looked at him shocked, but the guy continued without noticing, saying that you could be a maid, or a manager, or even a teacher, or do agricultural research. Becoming a scientist is a good choice. For Shen, there are many different professions other than temple service and one just has to want to. Seeing her surprise, the guy held out his hand and said that was unexpected, right? And the girl nodded. She didn't think of choosing something else. Supporting her, the guy said it was time to broaden her horizons, and the girl agreed. As they were walking back, Sheena said that she would be a priestess for a while longer. She was a little worried that, like her father, she would die without accomplishing anything. Smiling, the boy said she has nothing to worry about. Kuro has big plans for her. She's going to be the director of the workhouse, running the agricultural farm and distributing food to those who don't want to go to the workhouse, train his subordinates, and someone like a middleman for her to negotiate with other cities. The girl turned pale, saying that it was a gigantic amount of work. Then the guy smiled and asked if Sheena could agree to help him again. The girl smiled softly and said that if it was enough, then yes. After that, Shin helped with everything, and after a week, the workhouse was built. Looking at her, Kuro smiled and said that they had finally built it. Shin was happy too. She was a little worried, but with Kuro's support and such wonderful employees, she should be able to do well. A worker came out and told the director that the front desk was starting, and the girl nodded and said she was on her way. Kuro wished her luck and she thanked him as she left. It had been over 2 months since Kuro had bought Elena. Although it was said that she would mostly do accounting, she had even had to do clerical work lately. Even though she had her work cut out for her, at least she had finally found her place. Those skills are her last bit of pride. There was a knock on the door, and Sheila came inside and said that Elena didn't show up for lunch again. Elena said that nothing could be done because she was busy, to which Sheila said that no matter how busy she was, she needed to eat or else it was rude. Elena asked unclearly, in front of whom is it rude? In front of the peasants or the fertility goddess? Smirking, Sheila pointed at herself, somehow obviously in front of her, Sheila. Looking at her breasts, Elena said that she was quite old and not ashamed to walk around in such an outfit. Sheila flared up and then yelled that it was none of her business. And anyway, Kuro said it looked good on her. Squinting her eyes, Elena said she was pretty experienced, right? Gently touching her collar ring, Elena said that when Kuro grabs her collar or coldly looks at her, her heart beats so hard. Is that really love? The girl cautiously looked up and saw Sheila's cold eyes. Elena said, doubting if it was love. Confused, Elena said that if she sees Kuro as a boyfriend, isn't that love? Sheila sighed. Although she rephrased it for some reason, it didn't feel like love anymore. But she doesn't know if it's love or what. But that's not what Kuro is interested in. Elena asked what Sheila was talking about, and the girl, embarrassed, replied by adopting a look of thoughtfulness. Once upon a time, before she became a chef, she had heard all sorts of things from him about intimacy. Elena wondered what Kuro really thought about such things. Awkwardly scratching the back of her head, Sheila said that, well, he had some desires. Elena thought that if he did, wouldn't it be very crowded? Surely at that point he would just have a disgusted look on his face. Sheila looked at Elena and saw a creepy smile on her face. When she said that, Elena flinched and came to her senses, embarrassed, and then screamed what she thought she had. Walking around the room, Elena thought about how she needed to get to Kuro's room. That was the only way she could find out exactly what that feeling was. In order to do that, the issue with the maid who was rumored to be his mistress must be resolved. I think her name was Layla, wasn't it? A fight between Shiro and Hera was going on in the training ground, and Mino watched as Elena walked up to him holding a knife. Mino asked her what was wrong, and she asked if there was someone here named Layla she had a conversation to have with her. Mino said she was going to take a break, so shouldn't she wait a little longer? The girl was annoyed and almost yelled, but then she remembered Kuro's last words about being polite, and immediately shut up and nodded in agreement. A while later, Layla approached Elena and apologized for waiting. Elena lifted her chin and asked if she was Layla. She's Kuro's favorite who comes to see him every night, right? Layla said not all of them, and they are mostly busy with their studies. Elena then said that Kuro seemed to appreciate her, and the embarrassed elf nodded, averting her gaze. Elena was surprised that the expression on her face had changed. She had already thought she was like a doll, and she hadn't expected such an expression on her face. With her arms at her sides, Elena told Layla not to come to Kuro's house today, to which she sharply refused, saying that Kuro didn't tell her not to come today. Elena checks. It seems Layla has proven to be efficient to the bone, but this will ruin her. Smiling, Elena claps herself on her chest and says in that case she won't complain if she comes to Kuro today too, right? It's not like he told her to come alone. Layla squinted her eyes, and Elena said that if she understood, she should tell her that Elena would also come today. Layla, dissatisfied, nodded. It had been over 2 months since Kuro had bought Elena. Although it was said that she would mostly do accounting, she had even had to do clerical work lately. Even though she had her work cut out for her, at least she had finally found her place. Those skills are her last bit of pride. There was a knock on the door, and Sheila came inside and said that Elena didn't show up for lunch again. Elena said that nothing could be done because she was busy, to which Sheila said that no matter how busy she was, she needed to eat or else it was rude. Elena asked unclearly, in front of whom is it rude? in front of the peasants or the fertility goddess. Smirking, Sheila pointed at herself, somehow obviously in front of her. Sheila, looking at her breasts, Elena said that she was quite old and not ashamed to walk around in such an outfit. Sheila flared up and then yelled that it was none of her business. And anyway, Kuro said it looked good on her. Squinting her eyes, Elena said she was pretty experienced, right? Gently touching her collar ring, Elena said that when Kuro grabs her collar or coldly looks at her, her heart beats so hard. Is that really love? The girl cautiously looked up and saw Sheila's cold eyes. Elena said, doubting if it was love. Confused, Elena said that if she sees Kuro as a boyfriend, isn't that love? Sheila sighed, although she rephrased it for some reason. It didn't feel like love anymore, but she doesn't know if it's love or what. But that's not what Kuro is interested in. Elena asked what Sheila was talking about, and the girl, embarrassed, replied by adopting a look of thoughtfulness. Once upon a time, before she became a chef, she had heard all sorts of things from him about intimacy. Elena wondered what Kuro really thought about such things. Awkwardly scratching the back of her head, Sheila said that, well, he had some desires. Elena thought that if he did, wouldn't it be very crowded? Surely at that point he would just have a disgusted look on his face. Sheila looked at Elena and saw a creepy smile on her face. When she said that, Elena flinched and came to her senses, embarrassed, and then screamed what she thought she had. Walking around the room, Elena thought about how she needed to get to Kuro's room. That was the only way she could find out exactly what that feeling was. In order to do that, the issue with the maid who was rumored to be his mistress must be resolved. I think her name was Layla, wasn't it? A fight between Shiro and Hero was going on in the training ground, and Mino watched as Elena walked up to him holding a knife. Mino asked her what was wrong, and she asked if there was someone here named Layla she had a conversation to have with her. Mino said she was going to take a break, so shouldn't she wait a little longer? The girl was annoyed and almost yelled, but then she remembered Kuro's last words about being polite, and immediately shut up and nodded in agreement. A while later, Layla approached Elena and apologized for waiting. Elena lifted her chin and asked if she was Layla. She's Kuro's favorite who comes to see him every night, right? Layla said not all of them, and they are mostly busy with their studies. Elena then said that Kuro seemed to appreciate her, and the embarrassed elf nodded, averting her gaze. Elena was surprised that the expression on her face had changed. She had already thought she was like a doll, and she hadn't expected such an expression on her face. With her arms at her sides, Elena told Layla not to come to Kuro's house today, to which she sharply refused, saying that Kuro didn't tell her not to come today. Elena checks. It seems Layla has proven to be efficient to the bone, but this will ruin her. Smiling, Elena claps herself on her chest and says in that case she won't complain if she comes to Kuro today too, right? It's not like he told her to come alone. Layla squinted her eyes, and Elena said that if she understood, she should tell her that Elena would also come today. Layla, dissatisfied, nodded. It was painful. She was hit and told she was so worthless she couldn't be sold. No one would come to rescue her. She was destined to live her whole life as a powerless slave. It was a nightmare, and she jumped up in horror. Looking out the window, the girl realized that it looked like she had just had a bad dream. Sighing, she looked at Kuro and then remembered that she had slept in his room last night herself. She finally lay down again, but then she felt a hand on her waist. It was Kuro's own hands. His hands went higher, and the girl asked grudgingly that he was really only pretending to be asleep. Kuro said he was sleeping, and the demon lord sighed and wanted to say something, but she was grabbed by the collar ring. Her heart immediately jumped and she panicked and apologized for making him angry. She didn't want to until she was beaten. Kuro nuzzled against her and then blew lightly on her ear. She immediately remembered what Sheila had said and then what she had read, and with a sigh, the redhead yelled enough and jumped to the floor. She started banging her head on the floor, screaming that she wasn't that crazy. Those thoughts need to be put out of her head. The guy, seeing her like that, yelled at her to calm down, to which she yelled that she wasn't crazy. The guy said that since she was sane, she shouldn't be doing what she was doing now. The girl, shivering, told Kuro that she seemed to be going crazy at the thought of being grabbed by the scruff of the neck again and doing all sorts of cruel things. She felt excited about being beaten by a slave trader. Isn't that weird? The boy, looking at her, asked that maybe it was some kind of masochism. The girl, hearing a new word, turned around for an explanation, and the guy didn't disappoint and said it was something like a sexual preference. When you feel the pain of being mistreated yourself, you get aroused by the feeling of shame, and that makes it very pleasurable. The girl said doubtfully that when she was beaten she didn't feel anything like that. Kuro then said that she felt no pleasure or arousal from that pain and that kind of treatment. Elena asked what kind of relationship we were talking about, and the guy said they could check now. Smiling wickedly, the guy lifted his heel and told her to lick him. Sighing, the girl screamed about what nonsense he was talking about. Now that she understood the gist of that method, there was no more need to test it on Kuro herself. And then she saw Layla's smirk, and she was furious and wondered what was wrong with her. Did she really think she could do this on her own? Then Elena looked at Kuro's leg, still trembling, said she'd do it. You just need to lick it once, right? As she struggled to get closer, she thought she was like a dog. Damn it, so humiliating. Suddenly Kuro took his foot away and the girl looked up in surprise and apologized for not wanting to waste so much time. The guy said it was his fault and, scratching his cheek awkwardly, said that he wouldn't really let her lick his heel or anything. At the same time, Layla smirked in her direction and Elena got all red and yelled that he was a real devil and trash. What a humiliation. She never got any sleep after all that, and now she was having a hard time at work. I've made a lot of mistakes in my work, but it's still worth taking a break. Sheila knocked on the door, and seeing her, Elena said she hadn't even had breakfast yet. Sheila put one hand to her side and said she hadn't gotten much sleep. Then she looked at the bowl and said, "What else is it?" Smiling, Sheila said if she tried it, she would know. But Elena tried it and was pleasantly surprised. Cold, what was that? Sheila said it was the same ice cream Kuro told her about, and it was very easy to make. Sheila then started to talk about the cooking method, but Elena didn't listen to her at all. Elena said that she wouldn't make it anyway, but she was grateful for the treat. Sheila then said that it looks like it was a lot of fun last night, right? Jumping up, Elena asked how she knew, to which Sheila smirked and said that she herself knew what the maids liked best. So how did this happen? Did she do it all? Did you do it? Grinning, Elena said she didn't do it. She was interrupted. Sheila then said that isn't it great that the three of them get along so well? Helena said that just because it didn't apply to her, she shouldn't say such nonsense. Sheila nodded and said that well, it can't be helped. They are providing her a romantic setting alone with Kuro. Helena said she didn't want to, but Sheila, not listening to her, said she can rely on Sheila. At night Aline came to see if Sheila was telling the truth or not, and as expected, she was telling the truth. Elena cautiously approached the sleeping boy, and thought it was a good thing the half-elf wasn't here. By the way, as far as she remembered, Kuro was only a year older than her. How were they ultimately different from each other? Social status, gender, or combat experience? Elena sat down on the bed, and then squinted her eyes to see that he was definitely pretending to be asleep again. The guy, without flinching, said he was asleep, and Elena sighed. When Kuro got up, the girl asked what happened to his right eye. The guy responded by asking why she was doing that, to which the girl said she had wanted to ask for a long time, but the opportunity hadn't been there. The guy smiled and said that 3 months ago, they were attacked by the army of the Kingdom of St. Algo. The situation was such that although they tried to retreat, the enemy soldiers still struck. She asked with interest if those soldiers were really that strong, to which the guy smiled and said that it was more like he himself was very weak. After all, he couldn't pull out his sword when he needed to. Elena asked if he wanted to heal his wound at the shrine, since he had invested in it. But Kuro didn't need that, so he shook his head. Because of his order, many people had died, and because of its consequences, his subordinates were now suffering. And realizing all this, he just can't be so selfish to think only of himself. Elena nodded sadly. Kuro doesn't look like a real warlord or statesman at all. He cares too much about his subordinates who are nothing more than pawns in his hands. Smiling, Kuro asked her why she had come, and the girl, flaring up, said she wanted her pillow back. Smirking, the guy asked if she came to continue what they started yesterday. It looked that way. The girl capriciously yelled for him not to say anything stupid, because she had come specifically for the pillow. Kuro slipped his finger into her collar ring and she immediately blushed and her heart raced. Restraining herself, Elena said that there was nothing to be done to her, and nothing to be kissed, and nothing to be inserted either. At the same time, she thought that although, if Kuro himself wanted to, he could do it to her by force, it would really happen. The girl trembled at that very thought, but Kuro wasn't that kind of person and just let her go and said he wouldn't. Unwillingly, she turned around and asked sadly if that was true, and Kuro realized something. Realizing what she had said, she blushed dramatically and yelled that of course she didn't want that. Then she awkwardly lowered her head, and then suddenly Kuro pointed at something. Smiling, the guy said that although he wouldn't do it, he would listen to her imitate the animal sounds. The girl confusedly asked what the hell it was and what animal sounds she should imitate. The guy asked what, maybe pigs. The girl indignantly jumped up, yelling that she wouldn't do that, at which point the guy, smiling, said that he wouldn't return the pillow then. Eventually the girl gave in, thinking it was better to do as he wanted. She didn't care about the pillow, she could sleep without it, and she could even buy herself a new one. Leaning over, the girl made an embarrassed grunt on her face, and looking at it, the guy's eyes went cold and he asked her seriously, imitating the sounds of a pig. Startled, she felt hot and screamed, "So what?" The girl stated that he should give her the pillow back already. In the end that night she strangely became a pig, and woke up in the morning, and remembering yesterday, how he had bitten her, and it had been very embarrassing. Startled, the girl said he was a demon, to which he tiredly apologized. The girl said that since he wanted to apologize, he should have done it sooner. So many bite marks and they hurt so much and my breath is stale. He's just disgusting, a real monster. When she tried to get up, she felt weak in her legs, and the guy saw her stop and asked if she was alright, to which she shouted indignantly that he dared to ask her. "After you did that to her yourself." The guy smirked and the girl yelled at him to shut up and die already. Slamming the door, she left, screaming that he was a monster, a real devil, but still left again, without a pillow. She remembered going to his place to get a pillow, and it all ended up being a night together that hurt her and she doesn't know how long it will last.